Chapter 2157. Everyone could see that Monkey was at a disadvantage, and he was at a slight disadvantage. The disadvantage was that his skill was not as profound as Yao Xingyan's, and there was not much difference between them. At this time, he was at a slight disadvantage. Many people were even more shocked. They originally thought that Monkey and the others should be at the limit of the 8th level of the Paoang realm. The gap between them and Monkey and the others was mainly the gap in the realm. As long as they also stepped into the 8th level of the Paoang realm, they would naturally be able to reach such a level. So even if their strength was temporarily inferior, they did not have the slightest psychological weakness when facing Monkey and the others. As for Yi Shiwen, he was a monster, and was no longer within the scope of their consideration. However, Yao Xingyan made them suddenly realize that one could not possess similar combat power just because they had reached the same realm. They thought that Monkey was already at the peak of what mortals could achieve, but Yao Xingyan was even stronger than Monkey. It was unbelievable, but this was the God transformation abyss. All kinds of abnormal monsters had become normal here. Even they had to admit this. Some of them might be able to transform into a god in the future, but definitely not now. Monkey's expression was also constantly changing, and he was extremely fearful. It seemed that no one could suppress this arrogant Yao Xingyan in front of him. No, there was still one person. A name suddenly emerged in everyone's mind, and that person was Yi Shiwen. If it weren't for the previous 2 consecutive battles, everyone might not have so clearly felt the gap between them, especially the guy who was at the 6th level of the Paoang realm, but beat the blue-eyed golden toad, who was at the 8th level of the Paoang realm, to death. Thinking of this, almost at the same time, everyone turned their eyes to Yi Shiwen. He naturally felt that everyone's eyes had turned to him, hoping that he could come forward to stop the domineering Yao Xingyan. Yao Xingyan naturally noticed it too. His gaze finally shifted from the Monkey to Yi Shiwen. It was a little strange. These people had high hopes for a human at the 6th level of Paoang realm. Could it be that there was something strange about this human boy? Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said, "Go back. It's not too late to go back now if you don't want to die." Yao Xingyan's eyelids twitched and his expression changed. He laughed out loud and said, "This is the first time I've met someone more arrogant than me. Haha, interesting. Human, you dare to tell me to retreat? Who do you think you are? Let me dig out your heart and see if it has become a dog's gut. How dare you clamor in front of me?" He didn't react at first, but when he did, all that was left was boundless anger. As he said this, he glared at Yi Shiwen, and then slapped his palm directly towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't give in at all. Ever since he had successfully practiced the Broken World Blade, his cultivation had steadily entered the 9th level of the Paoang realm. The Monkey and the others were originally a threat to him, but now they weren't a threat at all. He also wanted to have a good fight with a worthy opponent. He didn't give in at all. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. He confronted Yao Xingyan with equal harshness, not giving in at all. Bang! With a loud roar, the fist and palm of the 2 sides collided. It was like 2 huge iron blocks colliding together. At this time, the collision produced an earth-shattering sound. Yi Shiwen took a few steps back slightly. His strength was slightly inferior. He hadn't integrated with the martial arts incarnation and put on the 5 Emperors' battle armor. His combat power wasn't at the peak, but he felt that it was enough. Yao Xingyan's body swayed slightly and stabilized, but his face immediately showed a somewhat surprised expression. In this round of collision, it seemed that he had the upper hand, but in fact, it couldn't be seen as such. He was a dignified 8th level of the Paoang realm, but he couldn't even deal with the 6th level of the Paoang realm. After a slap, Yi Shiwen only took a few steps back and was fine. Even the Monkey, who was in the same realm as him just now, had his perlicue ruptured. Blood flowed and he suffered a little. How tyrannical was Yi Shiwen's physical body to be to such an extent? Not only him, But the old people who were waiting to watch a good show also looked at Yi Shiwen with their mouths agape. They originally thought that the newcomers had lost their minds. They actually pinned all their hopes on a human with the lowest realm. From the looks of it, it wasn't that they had lost their minds. Instead, it was that this human had some tricks up his sleeves. Although they didn't know exactly how strong he was, it was obvious that he was stronger than the monkey. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been seen as a savior by everyone. Herculean King Kong, TSK, you really have some strength. Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes. Since you don't want to leave, then don't blame me. I don't care what brother or godfather you have. If you want the God Source in my hands, then let's see if you have the ability to do so. Yao Xingyan's face turned ugly. Yi Shiwen's words clearly meant that he was just a playboy who relied on his brother's name to run amok. Although Yi Shiwen was basically right, he could run amok, to a large extent, because those who could beat him would also give face to his brother and not casually attack him. He also wouldn't bully those he couldn't beat. Every time, he would choose the weaklings. In addition, his own strength was indeed tyrannical. Those weaklings couldn't even match his strength, let alone those who could match up to his brother. Therefore, it resulted in his fierce reputation. Good, just based on these words of yours, even if I have to risk being punished, I will beat you to death in public. Yao Xingyan was completely infuriated by Yi Shiwen. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Herculean King Kong palm. He roared and struck out with his palm. It turned into a huge golden palm. It was completely golden, and the entire world seemed to be submerged in it. In this golden kingdom, even the void space collapsed, bringing with it a series of violent waves of the world. This palm directly slammed down on Yi Shiwen. He no longer held back. This time, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to be careless. The devil's wings behind him spread open, and transformed into boundless devil energy that spread out. It collided with the boundless golden tide that was surging over. At the same time, his body directly integrated with the Fist Dao incarnation, making him instantly grow taller. He was like a supreme Fist Dao sage, walking between heaven and earth, turning the world into a world of Fist Dao. Ha, eat my fist. Human Dao fist. He directly blasted out his fist. That terrifying power didn't turn into a human Dao city, but directly turned into the surging mortal world, and then collided with the Herculean King Kong palm. Rumble! Boundless chi waves surged out directly, with the point of collision between the two as the center, sweeping out in all directions. It was like circles upon circles of earth-shattering waves, shaking everything away. This time, Yi Shiwen didn't retreat again. Both sides were actually evenly matched. Everyone was completely shocked. Those old people couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen could actually contend with Yao Xingyan. Among those in the same realm, there were only a few who could do it, not to mention that he was 2 realms lower. It was simply abnormal. And in the eyes of those newcomers, there was a burst of surprise and doubt. This was also the first time they really saw Yi Shiwen's amazing 6 paths of reincarnation fist. When Yi Shiwen first attacked, he had already displayed amazing cultivation in Blade Dao. The world-shattering blade directly beat the blue-eyed golden toad to the point where it couldn't fight back, establishing his current supreme prestige among the newcomers. But they never knew that his Fist Dao also had such amazing cultivation, to the point of condensing a Fist Dao incarnation. They didn't know how many trump cards he still had. These people were all heroes of their generation, secretly working hard with Yi Shiwen as their goal. Now they realized that it seemed that after 7 days of comprehension, the gap between them and Yi Shiwen didn't shrink. On the contrary, it had widened. In particular, the blue-eyed golden toad was even more unwilling. When Yi Shiwen defeated him previously, he didn't even merge with the Fist Dao incarnation. In other words, Yi Shiwen clearly didn't take him seriously, and he couldn't even make him use his full strength? He clenched his fists and stared at the 2 people in the void. Not bad, Take another punch from me. Yi Shiwen didn't have any other moves, but simply blasted out a human Dao fist directly. Even if Yao Xingyan wanted to say something, Yi Shiwen didn't give him such a chance at all, so he could only use the Herculean King Kong palm to clash with Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 Both sides were like two barbarians fighting, only relying on their powerful strength to resist, neither side giving way at all. Yao Xingyan's Herculean King Kong palm is a god-level technique inherited from his bloodline. What kind of fist technique is this Yi Shiwen using? It's not bad at all. Is there such a fist technique among the hundreds of inheritances in the Transforming God Tower? Someone couldn't help but exclaim, completely shocked. That's not the inheritance of the Transforming God Tower, it's his own inheritance. I recognize that martial art. It's one of the supreme inheritances of the demon race, the human Dao fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. A knowledgeable lord immediately recognized the origin of this human Dao fist. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist was really too famous. Along with the Azura demon king sweeping across the world, this set of fist techniques also became famous. In the past, even if someone obtained a fragment of the inheritance, it was enough to sweep across the world and become invincible. Of course, no one would really think that Yi Shiwen really had the complete version of the inheritance. After all, it was an emperor-level martial art, but even if it was just the inheritance of the human Dao fist, it was enough to be amazing. I've also figured out your strength, so I'll defeat you, Yi Shiwen shouted, and the surrounding 5 elements qi condensed. Chapter 2158. Around Yi Shiwen, countless energies of the 5 elements began to condense, and in an instant, all of them gathered on his body. 5 Emperor's battle suit. Boom! His aura suddenly expanded in an instant. In this state, the 5 elements battle suit instantly raised his combat power to a new level. Around him, the power of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, faintly condensed into 5 incomparably powerful Emperor Lords. The 5 elements' Emperor Lords directly guarded him in the middle, making him invincible. His body was surrounded by layers upon layers of the power of the 5 element. Inside his body, countless Xian cores were burning rapidly. Just by condensing the power of the 5 elements, hundreds of millions of Xian cores were instantly burned, and the number of Xian cores was breaking through 10,000 per second. He was burning at an astonishing speed. This was destined to not be a normal state, but it was also the absolute combat power that he could unleash. With the support of the Xian cores, he could now do things that he could not do previously. Yao Xingyan's pupils suddenly shrank. Yi Shiwen's combat power had actually increased by a level out of thin air, instantly surpassing him. Damn it, see if I don't interrupt you. Yao Xingyan suddenly panicked. Facing Yi Shiwen, who was directly rushing over, he directly slapped down with his palm. This was a kind of divine palm that could destroy heaven and earth. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed violently. There was no way to support it at all. His palm came over, and on the golden palm power, a golden tide, all of which were condensed with countless law talismans. If an ordinary 8th level of Paong realm was hit by this attack, they would be severely injured in an instant. The sound of his palm breaking through the air carried a kind of unimaginable rhythm. This sound could also hurt people. The most important thing was that it was powerful and heavy. The essence of the mighty King Kong palm was to use this boundless power to sweep and crush any opponent. He had always been successful in every endeavor, but unfortunately, this time he encountered a monster and a pervert like Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could not be calculated according to common sense at all. The strength of his gilded tyrant form was even more shocking. Boom! The mighty King Kong's palm directly slammed down. Yi Shiwen didn't block it. It was as if he hadn't reacted at all. Yao Xingyan's face revealed a somewhat triumphant grin. However, he hadn't fully reacted yet. However, He saw that his Herculean king Kong Palm had directly blasted into the area in front of Yi Shiwen. However, he was unable to blast any further than 10 feet in front of Yi Shiwen. An invisible 5 elements great array that was protecting Yi Shiwen instantly manifested. At the edge of the 5 elements grand formation were the 5 five-star Earths casting spells. Their blurry figures gave off Supreme Emperor's might as they swept out in all directions. Impossible! Yao Xingyan couldn't believe it. His all-out palm strike was actually blocked so easily. Yi Shiwen didn't even move a little. His big hand sank deeper and deeper, and even gradually disappeared into the void. However, he knew that it didn't reach Yi Shiwen at all. Instead, it directly entered into the different space. In other words, all the power of his palm was directly discharged into the different space. However, there was no way to hurt Yi Shiwen at all. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. In order to block this palm strike, he had used up tens of millions of Xian pills under the state of the 5 Emperors' battle armor. It could not be said to be cheap, but the effect was outstanding. Facing the attack of a master at the 8th level of the Paong realm, he could withstand it unscathed. Whoosh! Suddenly, countless golden divinities emerged from Yi Shiwen's body and formed a frenzied tide that rushed out in all directions. This time, I'll finish you off with one punch. Yi Shiwen's fist was wrapped in countless divinities. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched out. Human Dao Fist. Although it was still a simple human Dao fist, this fist technique contained countless laws and all kinds of changes. It was impossible to calculate. Even Yi Shiwen had not fully grasped it. Therefore, although he blasted out the human Dao fist every time, there were still differences. In fact, there were even significant differences. However, every time he blasted out the human Dao fist, he could gain new insights, and every time he blasted out the human Dao fist, it would be stronger. This was the fundamental reason why he was constantly getting stronger. Even in battle, he could absorb insights at any time and anywhere, and then transform them into stronger power. Damn it, bastard! Yao Xingyan kept retreating. Countless cracks appeared on the mighty King Kong palm that he blasted out. It was as if it was peeling off and completely shattered. Then, it turned into a mass of light and scattered in all directions. His move, the move that he was most proud of, was instantly broken by Yi Shiwen. However, the fist energy of Yi Shiwen's human Dao fist was just the beginning. Then, a punch directly blasted out, and directly blasted into Yao Xingyan's chest. Yao Xingyan knew that he had probably encountered an iron plate this time. However, he could not even retreat in time, and was directly blasted. Bang! His entire body was blasted out on the spot like a kite with a broken string. A big hole instantly appeared in his chest, dripping with blood. It was even directly penetrated by Yi Shiwen. The physical body that he was so proud of was nothing in the face of Yi Shiwen's human Dao fist. In fact, he could not even heal his wound. He was still being burnt by the power of the human Dao fist at any time and place. Didn't you look down on us? Didn't you think that you are great? It turns out that you are only at this level. I still overestimated you. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. There was a bit of disdain in his eyes. He looked down on this kind of existence that bullied the weak and feared the strong the most. Yao Xingyan was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood again. He had been arrogant all his life. Although it was partly because of his brother, wasn't he also a peerless genius himself? He had an invincible disposition, and there was hope for him to prove his Tao in the future. He had never suffered such a big loss before, not to mention being looked down upon like this. Damn human, I will definitely kill you. After killing you, I will raze your entire clan to the ground. I will also destroy the world that gave birth to you. Just wait for your death. Yao Xingyan seemed to have gone crazy. He had been forced onto the path of madness by Yi Shiwen. His eyes stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly opened when he heard this. He could see that this Yao Xingyan was definitely a person who would do what he said. Since he had said so, he would most likely do so in the end. Just because of this sentence, you must die. You have completely infuriated me. Yi Shiwen's eyes were cold, and there was a murderous intent in his eyes. Ha ha, just because of you. Yao Xingyan laughed out loud. The injuries all over his body actually began to heal. A huge figure directly integrated into his body. It was his martial arts incarnation. At this time, it had completely integrated into his body. At this critical moment, he was finally going to integrate his martial arts incarnation. He had been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen, and there was no other choice. Rumble. After integrating with the martial arts incarnation, his strength had increased by a level. It was no longer the same as before. His eyes were crazy, and he had long lost the slightest bit of rationality. He had never suffered such a big loss before. The only thought in his mind now was to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. He absolutely could not let Yi Shiwen live. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen might become his own inner demon. The more powerful a person was, the more they could not accept such a failure. Everyone understood this principle, but not everyone could truly face it calmly. And those who could truly face failure calmly would often have extraordinary achievements in the future. Die. A huge hand suddenly materialized and expanded against the wind. It fell like a cloud in the sky, covering the entire sky. It directly slammed down like a group of golden clouds. Human Dao Fist. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly and directly blasted out a punch. This punch was earth-shattering, and it broke through the sky and fiercely collided with that big hand. Boom! The shocking collision caused the void to shatter into endless chaos. The whole scene looked extremely terrifying. The confrontation between the two could be said to be the strongest under the mythical peak. Countless people around were stunned. What kind of level of battle was this? It had completely exceeded their initial expectations. Was this a battle that people at their level could carry out? Oh no, Yi Shiwen is in trouble now. The monkey narrowed his eyes and could not help but say. Yi Shiwen, who had integrated with the martial arts incarnation, was unparalleled. However, Yao Xingyan had condensed the martial arts incarnation and instantly turned the tables. The strength of both sides had once again declined. In the same realm, Yi Shiwen should be far stronger than Yao Xingyan. However, the problem was that they were not in the same realm now. This was the most crucial point. Ha ha, go to hell. Yao Xingyan had already gone completely crazy. He did not care about the consumption of martial power at all. He slammed his palm down again and again. Even Yi Shiwen, who was under the protection of the 5 elements major formation, was showing signs of not being able to hold on. He was faintly about to be defeated. He is really going to lose. However, he is able to force Yao Xingyan to this point with his identity of the 6th heaven of Paoang realm. I'm afraid that no one has ever done this before. TSK, a peerless genius of the generation. It's a pity that he is going to die here. He has completely forced Yao Xingyan to a dead end. If he is not killed, how will Yao Xingyan live in the future? I'm afraid that Yao Xingyan would rather be punished than to kill him. No, look, that Yi Shiwen has not given up yet. Everyone quickly looked over and saw that under Yao Xingyan's attack, Yi Shiwen, who seemed to be only able to defend, was also on the verge of exploding. In his body, countless sword auras gushed out from his pores, instantly condensing into the sword incarnation. Then, this sword incarnation directly rushed into his body. Boom! Waves of air swept out and swept towards the boundless primal chaos. Chapter 2159. Die. Yao Xingyan, who had yet to realize what was happening, felt a little uneasy in his heart. He decided to strike first. No matter what kind of strength he could still unleash, the premise was that he could unleash it. His palm directly slammed down, becoming bigger and bigger. He concentrated all the power in his body, wanting to dominate the universe with one palm. He was no longer satisfied with the slow speed from before. Bang! Suddenly, he sensed that his palm had been blocked by an even more powerful force. Boom! Then there was another huge roar, and the big hand that he had materialized was crushed on the spot. Ah! He screamed and retreated again and again. His entire arm was about to be grabbed by Yi Shiwen into a bloody mist. If he had retreated a little later, he would have been grabbed to death by Yi Shiwen on the spot. However, although his arm was not crushed, it was not far from it. The bones of his entire arm had been completely broken. A look of horror flashed in his eyes. In front of him, Yi Shiwen stood steadily in the sky. Golden divinities were constantly appearing under his feet, and he was as powerful as a god in the world. His eyes were cold, and his body constantly spewed out powerful waves. The powerful strength that gushed out from his pores made people feel terrified just by looking at him. This is the second martial arts incarnation. Everyone was shocked. There were many people present who had condensed their first martial arts incarnation. After all, those who could gather here were peerless geniuses among peerless geniuses. However, only a few of them could condense a second martial arts incarnation. It was already very difficult to condense the first martial arts incarnation, let alone the second. It was simply not something that ordinary people could do. Now that they had finally seen one, how could they not be shocked, especially Monkey and the others? They were finally convinced that there was indeed a world of difference between them and Yi Shiwen. In particular, the blue-eyed golden toad had always been unwilling. He had not had the time to use his strongest strength, and he had not even condensed a martial arts incarnation before he was defeated. He felt extremely wrong. However, it seemed that even if he condensed a martial arts incarnation, he would only end up being crushed. He might not even be able to withstand the first martial path incarnation, let alone force him to use the second martial path incarnation. You can actually… Yao Xingyan couldn't believe it. No wonder he couldn't do anything to him no matter what. He had actually condensed a second martial arts incarnation. This level of strength was simply earth-shattering. Although he had a similar technique to condense a second clone, he had yet to succeed. One could imagine how difficult it was to do so. The condensation of martial arts incarnation was not necessarily related to one's strength. Many experts who had reached the Tao realm could not even condense a few martial arts incarnations. This was related to opportunities, talents, and many other aspects. Strength was naturally one of them, but it was not the only aspect that determined victory or defeat. To be able to force me to this point, you're pretty good, Yi Shiwen said. He seemed to be praising her, but his face didn't have the slightest look of praise. On the contrary, there was a somewhat sinister look on his face. All right, the game ends here. Whoosh. At that moment, Yi Shiwen made his move. He didn't even use any martial arts. He merely threw a slap. Bang. Everything had reached a climax. Yao Xingyan didn't even have time to react. He was directly slapped. Just when he was about to be slapped away by the force, he found that he was unknowingly fixed in place by a force. He could only take this monstrous force head-on. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen had already thrown thousands of slaps, directly slapping Yao Xingyan into a pig's head. Bang! Finally, he was sent flying by a slap. His physical body, which was said to be incomparably strong, was almost smashed into pieces. In the face of absolute power, Yao Xingyan had no ability to fight back. After condensing the second martial arts incarnation, Yi Shiwen's strength was not as simple as just doubling compared to before. Everything had started too quickly and ended too quickly. Just like how no one had expected that Yi Shiwen had actually concealed such strength, no one had expected that the real battle would end so quickly after it had broken out. Yao Xingyan's martial arts incarnation had been pulled out by Yi Shiwen at some point in time. This enormous energy also contained his understanding of martial art. Yi Shiwen swallowed it all in front of everyone. One had to know that the martial Tao embodiment was something that could only be condensed when a cultivator had an extremely deep understanding of a certain martial Tao. It was almost all the essence of a warrior's understanding, and Yi Shiwen swallowed all of it. Boom! Countless energies were scouring Yi Shiwen's body. Countless martial arts information was also crazily pouring into his mind. Yao Xingyan's entire cultivation was condensed into the palm technique. This martial arts incarnation was also the incarnation of the palm technique. Although Yi Shiwen also specialized in palm techniques over the years, his main focus was on boxing techniques, saber techniques, and sword technique. These three martial arts were no longer at the same level. Now that he swallowed Yao Xingyan's palm technique incarnation in one breath, it allowed him to climb to the peak of palm techniques and catch up in an instant. Yao Xingyan almost swallowed all the essence of a Paong realm master in martial arts. Although Yao Xingyan was arrogant in terms of strength, it was obvious to everyone that he was not inferior at all. He only felt that the power of his whole body was constantly rushing out, and he was only a moment away from a real breakthrough. The scene was silent. Everyone was stunned and didn't know what to say. "Damn it, beast!" Yao Xingyan kept roaring. His physical body was about to shatter. "I won't let you go. I want your whole family, your whole clan, the whole world to die without a burial place. You're courting death." Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He took a step forward and a wave of air filled the sky. Yao Xingyan was blasted away again. "Kill me if you have the ability. You don't dare at all," Yao Xingyan said coldly. "As long as I don't die today, I want you to die. Sooner or later, you will die in my hands." Killing intent flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes, and he said, "You're forcing me to kill you." He really didn't want to kill people and provoke a mortal enemy in this unknown deification abyss. "You don't dare." Yao Xingyan spat out these words coldly, as if he was regaining the only dignity that he had lost. But just as his voice fell, a shocking sword light fell from the sky and directly blasted into his body. It caused his physical body that was already about to collapse to explode completely. His spirit also exploded completely, and he couldn't be more dead. "I'm sorry, although I don't want to get into trouble, I hate it when people threaten me, especially when they threaten my family," Yi Shiwen said faintly. He really didn't want to kill people, but at critical moments, he never lacked decisiveness to kill. This Yao Xingyan was used to being lawless. If he said he would do it, he would not leave behind such a trace. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the craziest person didn't think that things would turn out like this. Yao Xingyan was actually killed by Yi Shiwen. This world was too crazy. Yao Xingyan was killed. For the newcomers, Yao Xingyan was just a particularly arrogant senior, and he was even a senior who came to seize their celestial source. But for the old people who had been in the deification abyss for a long time, this was almost a huge earthquake. It didn't matter if Yao Xingyan died. In the deification abyss, although there were controls, such things often happened. But he just wanted Yao Xingyan. Why didn't anyone stand up to stop him even though they obviously didn't like him? It was because he was Yao Xingyan. Oh my God, did I see it wrong? This is crazy. This newcomer is in big trouble. Yao Xingyan is killed. I'm afraid Yao Xingqing is completely crazy now. Oh my God, I must be seeing things. How dare this newcomer, how dare he be so bold? Oh my God, the earth is going to shake. Yao Xingyan and Yao Xingqing have always had a good relationship. Now that Yao Xingyan is dead, Yao Xingqing must be crazy. Maybe he will implicate these newcomers and kill them all. After a long silence, everyone suddenly burst into discussion. Even the old people felt that it was unacceptable. Oh my God, this Yi Shiwen is so fierce. But with his character, he will definitely seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Kiki, he can be a friend. The monkey laughed and said with a strange smile. The gazes of the people around him became strange. You're really enjoying the show and don't mind the matter getting bigger. How could Yi Shiwen not know that killing Yao Xingyan would probably cause big trouble? But he had no other choice. Yao Xingqing was able to squeeze into the top 10, and his strength was probably above Huyan Yan's. The current Yi Shiwen absolutely could not deal with him. Fortunately, he still had 2 years. These 2 years belonged to the protection period for the newcomers. As long as he stayed in the Taoist rite, Yao Xingqing could not do anything to him. As long as he improved further during this period, it would not be a problem for him to contend with the 9th level of Paoang realm. At least he would have the power to protect himself. He had already calculated all of this. It seemed to be reckless, but in fact, it was after careful consideration. This was already the best solution he could come up with. However, he still had a problem. How would he be judged in the deification abyss after killing someone? What kind of punishment would he face? It would definitely not be simple. Otherwise, with Yao Xingyan's unruly character, he would not be so afraid. Chapter 2160. Yao Xingyan was killed by Yi Shiwen, so his wealth naturally fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. However, Yi Shiwen was disappointed. Even he only had 2 pieces of divine source. However, it made sense when he thought about it. If he had enough resources, he wouldn't need to rob everywhere to maintain his cultivation. However, it was always a good thing to have 2 more pieces of divine source. He didn't look back, nor did he look at the people who were scared silly by him. He went straight back to the Taoist sanctum. I want to know, what's the punishment for killing Yao Xingyan? Yi Shiwen didn't hide anything and directly asked Elder Kong. In God Transformation Abyss, killing someone can be a big or small matter. You won't have to pay with your life, but it's not like there's no punishment at all. Generally speaking, you'll be thrown directly into the blood prison. If you can return from the blood prison alive, then it's fine. But if you die in there, then it's a different story. Elder Kong said lightly, as if he was talking about something unimportant. But you're a newcomer, so you have 2 years of protection period. So even if you're sent to the blood prison, it'll be 2 years later. You'll be fine for a while. Ha ha ha, to be honest, I've been here for many years, and this is the first time I've seen a newcomer's protection period used in this kind of place. Yi Shiwen was also somewhat embarrassed. Although he was forced to do so, but in fact, it was really rare for a newcomer to be able to kill a person. How could an average person have such strength? Admittedly, those who came from the outside world were all geniuses, but those who could stay here were all geniuses and evildoers. Not to mention, they had been cultivating for so long, so it was normal to say that they couldn't compare with you. But after hearing Elder Kong's words, he was a little relieved. There were still 2 years left. At least he wouldn't be thrown into the blood prison unprepared. But even so, don't be too relaxed. In a place like the blood prison, there are even powerful experts, evil gods, and Paoang realm captured by our ancestors. So what if you're at the 9th level of Paoang realm? If you're not careful, you'll die in there. Under normal circumstances, the survival rate of 5 years is only 30%. And this is under normal circumstances. Yao Xingyan is dead, and Yao Xingqing won't let you go easily. At that time, you won't only have to face the powerful existences in the blood prison. According to my estimation, your survival rate is less than 10%. Elder Kong said faintly. Yi Shiwen's expression changed slightly as he listened. With his current strength, he was almost the strongest person below the mythical peak. He didn't even have a chance of survival. What kind of existence was this blood prison? Indeed, compared to other places, the punishment for murder in this God Transformation Abyss was not too excessive. However, what was truly terrifying was the survival rate. This was the most terrifying thing. What's wrong? Do you regret it? Elder Kong looked at Yi Shiwen with a faint smile. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, I can't retreat now that things have come to this. I can only say that he's fated to face this tribulation. Not to mention, I never regret the things I do. A real man has an indomitable spirit. There's no need to regret, I have a clear conscience. Elder Kong nodded in satisfaction. There was a rare hint of appreciation in his eyes. Good, it's not bad to think that way. Although it's a calamity for you, it's also a great opportunity for you. Although the survival rate isn't high, if you can survive, your cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. Among the top 10 in the third region, 3 of them have fought their way out of the blood prison. As for the others, even if they haven't killed anyone, they would still go to the blood prison to temper themselves. It can be said that although it's very dangerous, if you can come back alive, then there will be a place for you in the third region in the future. That's good. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest fear on his face. He didn't have much time. If he wanted to improve to a sufficient level in a short period of time, he naturally had to pay a price. He was already prepared. I need to race against time. This is also a great training for me. God doesn't give me time, so I can only fight my way out. I have no other choice. Help me look after the training hall. I don't want to go out within 2 years. I don't want anyone to disturb me. Yi Shiwen said and went into the depths of the training hall without looking back. Don't worry, the rookie protection period of 2 years is the rule. No one can break such a rule. Even if Yao Xingqing came in person, it would be useless. Elder Kong said. Just when Yi Shiwen entered the closed-door training, the outside world had completely exploded. Whether it was the newcomers or those who were watching the show, they didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Although they were watching the show and didn't mind the matter getting bigger, they never thought that it would reach this point. Yao Xingyan's death was nothing. However, this matter involved Yao Xingqing, one of the top 10 experts. As everyone knew, Yao Xingqing and Yao Xingyan had a very good relationship. This was also the reason why everyone could tolerate Yao Xingyan. Even if they didn't want to give face to the monk, they still had to give face to the Buddha. Now that Yao Xingyan was dead, it would set off a shocking wave. As for those newcomers, although they were speechless, they couldn't say anything. Even if they might face Yao Xingqing's anger, could it be that Yi Shiwen was wrong to stand up for them? No matter how heartless they were, they wouldn't say such a thing. Sure enough, it didn't take long for this matter to spread throughout the third district of the deity transformation abyss. It wasn't that Yi Shiwen and Yao Xingyan had such a great influence, but anything related to Yao Xingqing, a top 10 expert, could attract the attention of countless people in the third district. Even this candidate included the other top 10 expert. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. Coupled with some people adding fuel to the fire, this matter became the hottest topic in the third district overnight. And Yao Xingqing didn't let everyone down. After learning of his brother's death, although he was still in cultivation, he also issued an order to drive out Yi Shiwen and let him die without a burial place. It was just that he was still in the rookie protection period. Even with Yao Xingqing's domineering attitude, he couldn't challenge the inherent rules of the deity transformation abyss. Rules were rules, and no one could break them. So what he could do now was to keep a close eye on Yi Shiwen so that he couldn't escape. As for the protection period of 2 years, the rest was simple. Even if Yao Xingqing blew up the dojo, the people of the deity transformation abyss would not intervene. At most, they would throw him into the blood prison after the incident. The strong were king, and the weak had no place to stand. This was also the rule here. If you don't want to be bullied, quickly become strong. This was the unspoken rule of the deity transformation abyss. Although there were countless pairs of eyes outside, Yi Shiwen didn't have such awareness. Instead, he began to cultivate in seclusion. This time, his harvest was not small. Although he only obtained 2 pieces of divine source, The most important thing was that after he devoured Yao Xingyan's martial arts incarnation, his understanding of the Palm Dao had also improved by leaps and bounds. In one breath, his martial arts had made great progress. After 7 days of comprehension, he had already firmly consolidated his realm into the 9th level of Paoang realm. It was only a matter of time for him to break through this time. But even so, if he wanted to improve by leaps and bounds in a short period of time, it would be possible to do so with the help of the power of Divine Source. His realm was enough. It was like digging a big enough pool, but it would take time to fill it up. Normally, it would take a lot of time to accumulate, so he had to borrow the power of the Source of God to allow him to instantly surpass the power that ordinary people would need to use 1,000 or even several thousand years to accumulate. He sat cross-legged in the deepest part of the mansion, and all the nomological laws around him manifested. In this deification abyss, he seemed to be able to easily sense the existence of the nomological laws. He also seemed to understand why there were so many terrifying existences in the blood prison. In this place where the laws could almost be felt with the physical body, how could there not be terrifying existences for a long time? Above his head, the Divine Source suddenly exploded, turning into endless energy and information of the Great Path, all of which were infused into his body. For others, the Divine Source was extremely precious, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of it when using it. He lacked time and still lacked time. Not enough time, still not enough. Not enough, not enough, he shouted. His body was like a huge sponge, crazily absorbing the power and information of the Great Path contained in the source of the Divine Source. He even felt a sense of hunger and thirst. This was the first time he had felt something like this since he was able to abstain from eating. His body rapidly absorbed the energy and information of the Great Path, which was the fundamental existence to promote his progress. Again, he roared, and a piece of Divine Source floated out, and then instantly shattered again with a bang. All of it turned into energy and information of the Great Path, and all of it poured into Yi Shiwen's body. He had to race against time with everyone. He couldn't rest for even a moment. And in such a crazy cultivation, time was also advancing rapidly. Month after month flew by, and he didn't feel anything at all. In the blink of an eye, more than a year had passed, and the time limit of 2 years was approaching. At this time, Yi Shiwen, who was in close cultivation, felt like his whole body was on fire, and countless flames burned directly from his body. Chapter 2161. It was the Nanmingli fire. It seemed to be burning something. It was burning fiercely from his body, turning into a cloud of green smoke that was burned out of his body. The energy within his body seemed to be unable to withstand it any longer. It completely erupted and rushed out like a torrent. Boom! That incomparably powerful force spread out and helped him break through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. I've finally arrived. He opened his eyes. In the past 2 years, he had been frantically trying to break through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. This was much more difficult than any of his previous breakthroughs. After all, breaking through from the 6th level to the 7th level of the Paoang realm was equivalent to breaking through from the intermediate level to the advanced level of the Paoang realm. In the past year or so, he had consumed a total of 10 pieces of Divine Source before finally breaking through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. If others knew about this, they would be shocked. Many people didn't even need 10 pieces of Divine Source to break through to the peak of the mythical realm. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He wasn't an ordinary 6th level of the Paoang realm. Breaking through to the 7th level of the Paoang realm was just a normal change. His combat power had taken a leap from the peak of the 8th level of the Paoang realm to the 9th level of the Paoang realm. Given his strength at the 7th level of the Paoang realm, it was easy to imagine the difficulty of breaking through to the 9th level of the Paoang realm. Of course, this could only be achieved by using the martial path incarnation and the 5 emperor battle robe. Even so, it was already shocking enough. If word of this were to get out, it would probably shock everyone. Even so, he wasn't satisfied. He was at most stronger than an ordinary 9th-level Pawang realm cultivator. He was still far from being able to contend with a top-notch powerhouse like the Divine Union leader by relying on his own strength. However, he had no choice but to come out of seclusion. Although he wanted to continue breaking through, he didn't have much time left. There were only 3 more days, and it would be 2 years at most. This meant that the 4th competition was about to begin. He hadn't participated in the previous 3 times, but this time, he had to participate. The previous 3 times were under the protection of the newcomers. It didn't matter if he didn't go or not, because he wouldn't be eliminated because of his ranking. However, it was different this time. If they didn't participate, they would be immediately eliminated. Even if they did participate, they would still be eliminated if they couldn't enter the top 1,000. The cruelest part of the deity transformation abyss, after 2 years, was finally going to bare its fangs and reveal its most brutal true face. At this time, Elder Kong, who had been guarding outside, came in, looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "What, are you ready? There are only 3 days left before the semi-annual competition begins. I have to remind you that you didn't participate in the last 3 times, and that's fine. But this time, you must participate." "I understand." Yi Shiwen nodded. He held the token in his hand and then continued to seclusion. He wanted to use the last 3 days to consolidate his strength and completely consolidate his fighting strength in the 9th level of Pawang realm. This way, he would be able to face the competition 3 days later. This was also the first time he was going to participate in a competition, so he couldn't afford to fail. Although he was confident in himself, he couldn't guarantee that he would encounter an unexpected situation and make a mistake. Not only for Yi Shiwen, but also for the newcomers living in the surrounding area, this was also a crucial competition. In the previous 3 competitions, some people had participated, some had not participated, and some had only participated in 1 or 2 of the 3 competitions. But it didn't matter because it wouldn't cause them to be kicked out. But this time, if they couldn't break into the top 1,000, then the result waiting for them would inevitably be that they would be kicked out. They had already entered the virtual world. This was a huge world, just like the real world. Many people couldn't even tell the difference between the virtual world and the real world. They also didn't know what kind of great existence could create such a virtual world. Everything about them was also just like the real world. The newcomers gathered together in groups of 3 to 5. 2 years was enough for them to have a certain degree of familiarity with each other, and also formed small groups of various sizes. Their relationship was much closer than 2 years ago. 2 years had made them completely understand that the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad's previous words about being united to protect themselves were definitely not just a lie, but something that they really needed to do. If they did not unite, then it was very likely that they would be devoured by the older generation, and not even their bones would be left. When an individual's strength couldn't guarantee their survival, the only choice left was to unite and protect themselves. As newcomers who came in with the same batch, they had no other choice but to protect themselves. This time, I don't know how many people will be able to stay in the end. Many people muttered in their hearts. Compared to 2 years ago, their strength was more than just a little stronger, and many people even had a breakthrough in the realm. Compared to 2 years ago, it could be said that there was a great transformation. However, in the past 2 years, most of them had participated in the competition more or less, and they truly knew the gap between them and these old people. They knew how big the gap was between them and these old people. Not to mention the experts whose realm was far above theirs, even experts of the same realm could easily defeat them, and they almost had no power to fight back. Although there had been some changes in the past 2 years, it was still very rare to be able to survive. Everyone was extremely worried that if they couldn't survive today, then their fate would be worrisome. In other words, even if they could survive, so what? What was the use? The next competition would be half a year later. At this time, they truly understood what it meant to only choose monsters. It was impossible for ordinary people to survive here. This was a place where only monsters lived. But at least Sun Qingtian and the others could still survive. The three of them, in just 2 years, participated 3 times, and each time they made great progress. In the first time, the 3 of them entered the top 1,000 together. Yes, their progress was even faster. Yes, they improved even faster after that. In the second round, they had already made it into the top 500. In the previous round, they had already entered the top 300. However, it would be extremely difficult for them to improve further. The 8th layer of the Paong stage is their limit. Now, their strength is probably comparable to Yao Xingyan's from 2 years ago. Indeed, not a single one of them is a simple character. This time, probably only the 3 of them can stay in the competition. The others are somewhat unlucky. Even if they break into the 8th heaven of Paong realm, they can't say for sure that they won't fail miserably. Someone sighed and said, those who could enter the top 1,000 were, without exception, at the peak of the 7th heaven of Paong realm. However, those who could squeeze into the top 1,000 with the identity of the 7th heaven of Paong realm were all extremely strong people. They were basically invincible in the same realm, and they also needed good luck. If they encountered a stronger opponent, they could be directly eliminated. Even the experts of the 8th heaven of Paong realm could fail miserably. Unless they stepped into the peak of the 8th heaven of Paong realm, it was possible to enter the top 1,000 steadily and not be eliminated. Naturally, everyone was extremely worried. Among them, not even 30% could enter the 8th heaven of Paong realm, and there were only a few who were already at the peak of the 8th heaven of Paong realm. Even so, many people called it the strongest in so many years. In the past, it was already not bad to have a few people break into the 8th heaven of Paong realm. This was the gap. But even so, it was useless. Those who should be eliminated would still be eliminated, and even if they were unlucky, they could be eliminated. Here, geniuses were the least valuable. There were also people who were unwilling to give up and went to find Elder Kong. They were geniuses, and as long as they had enough time, it was more than enough to catch up with those people. However, Elder Kong just said contemptuously, "Geniuses? Who isn't? You are just eliminated product. Even if you catch up, who knows to what extent the others have already improved. You are not at the same level at all." Those who could stabilize in the top 1,000 all year round were all geniuses. Even if there were a few fish that slipped through the net, it was not a big deal at all. In this place, the most worthless thing was geniuses. Although it was not to say that geniuses were like grass, but in fact, there was not much difference. No, there is actually another person. Did you forget? Someone suddenly said. Everyone was silent all of a sudden. They also knew that the person they were talking about was Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had vanished from the face of the earth in the past 2 years. He hadn't appeared even once. At first, everyone was expecting him to display his invincible might. However, it was a pity that he hadn't appeared even once. This had disappointed everyone. Yi Shiwen. In the crowd, the blue-eyed golden toad clenched his fists. When Yi Shiwen was mentioned, it reminded him of the almost humiliating failure 2 years ago. There was no reason to say that it was a humiliating failure. It was because everyone knew this, so they rarely mentioned Yi Shiwen's name, for fear of provoking him. Although I don't know to what extent he has improved in the past 2 years, even if there is no progress, I am afraid that with his strength 2 years ago, I am afraid that he is capable of breaking into the top 200, someone said. This statement was recognized by everyone. Even a proud person like them wouldn't casually slander such a powerhouse. Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to have exceeded their level. In fact, they didn't even have the qualifications to look up to him. Chapter 2162. Although they did not want to admit it, they had to admit that they could not catch up to Yi Shiwen's level 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he was already strong enough to beat up Yao Xingyan. So, how strong would he be 2 years later? Could he have entered the 9th level of the Paong realm? Someone guessed boldly. I don't think so. How could he be so fast? Yi Shiwen was only a few years old, but he already had the strength to defeat the 8th level of the Paong realm. If he advanced further, how powerful would he be? Moreover, it was impossible to be so fast. Although it was only one level, everyone knew that this one level was a world of difference. It directly separated the upper and middle levels of the 3rd division. Stepping into the 9th heaven of Paong realm meant that one would be able to step into the upper levels of the 3rd division. One should know that the top 100 people in the 3rd division were all at the 9th heaven of Paong realm. If news of this spread, it would be enough to shock many worlds. Even in the mysterious world, the Divine Union, apart from the leader of the Divine Union, only Daijibai was at the 9th level of the Paong realm. In the God Transformation Abyss, there were hundreds of people at the 9th level of the Paong realm in the 3rd district alone, and this was after eliminating many unqualified people. Many people who reached a certain age were all eliminated. It was that simple. One could imagine how difficult it was to reach the 9th heaven of Paong realm. What's more, he was still at the 6th heaven of Paong realm. To reach the 9th heaven of Paong realm in terms of combat power, the difficulty would be more than 10 times more difficult than breaking through from the 8th heaven to the 9th heaven of Paong realm. However, when everyone thought about it again, they realized that nothing was impossible for Yi Shiwen. Perhaps, when everyone thought that it was impossible, he had done it. After the initial shock, everyone secretly began to compare in their hearts. The road to proving the Tao was long and arduous. It was too early to say who would win and who would lose now that it had not been completed yet. The one who had the last laugh would be the one who had the best laugh. Suddenly, just as everyone was discussing, a figure slowly appeared in the void realm. Everyone fixed their eyes on it. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? After 2 years, Yi Shiwen's aura had become even more restrained. He looked even more enigmatic. It's Yi Shiwen, it's really Yi Shiwen. That's right, it really is him. After not seeing him for a few years, he seems to have become even stronger. I can't even see through him now. At this time, Yi Shiwen gave everyone the feeling that he was like an unfathomable sea. If they could see some of it before, then they couldn't see it at all now. In the end, they couldn't see how unfathomable he was. However, even in the past, they had never clearly seen Yi Shiwen's true level. Yi Shiwen glanced around and realized that he had not seen each other for 2 years. Monkey was the only person he was familiar with among these people. However, Monkey had already walked over before he could walk over. You've finally come out of seclusion. I heard that you've been in seclusion for the past 2 years. Now that you've come out, you must have gained a lot. Let's find a chance to spar. Monkey rubbed his hands and grinned. All right, Yi Shiwen said, but it seems that you have to wait for me to come back from the blood prison. Monkey's face stiffened slightly, but he was not surprised. After the incident with Yi Shiwen, how could they not understand the restrictions of killing others? In particular, the survival rate of the blood prison was even more shocking. It seemed that the survival rate was actually not too low, at least 30%. However, in reality, those who were thrown into the blood prison were all top geniuses. These people only had less than 30% survival rate. If it were an ordinary person, they would basically die after entering. The blood prison is quite interesting. I'll go in and play when the time comes. Monkey restrained his smile and said, I can't lose to you by too much. I can't beat you now, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to beat you in the future. As a top genius of the three-eyed heavenly monkey race, he was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone. In fact, he was right. In just 2 years, he had already made it to the middle ranks. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than a few years for him to make it to the top 100. Although it seemed that the top 100 was not as good as the top 10, it was already very rare. After all, those who were defeated by them, even those who were eliminated from the top 1,000, were all overlords of their respective world. They had defeated countless enemies in order to be able to do so. Therefore, every time they eliminated someone, it was like eliminating hundreds of millions or even billions of creatures that were defeated by them at the same time. Such a terrifying elimination rate meant that even the top 100 would have an extraordinary status. However, it was obvious that Monkey definitely wouldn't set his goal only on the top 100. Ha ha, then I'll be waiting for you when the time comes, Yi Shiwen said with a forthright smile. Although he didn't speak much with Monkey, he really liked him and got along well with him. But you have to be careful. I heard that Yao Xingqing has already sent people to the blood prison to intercept you. He might even take action personally. Monkey reminded. The blood prison was too big and too chaotic. The death rate was as high as 70%, which made it a bloody hell. It was normal for people to die in there. If he really wanted to do something, the blood prison would be very suitable. Don't worry. Yi Shiwen heard it, but he didn't take it to heart. What kind of place was the blood prison? Yao Xingqing couldn't even take care of himself after entering here. How would he have the time to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen? Even if Yao Xingqing really wanted to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen, he would have to wait until Yi Shiwen could find him. Yi Shiwen. Just when they were about to speak, the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad walked up, then stared at Yi Shiwen and said, "Last time, I was ranked 268. You can only be stronger than me, not weaker than me. You have to be careful. Don't be eliminated before this. Otherwise, I can't convince myself that I lost to you." Yi Shiwen looked at the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad for a while, then suddenly smiled and said, "This time, I will let you see my strength. A mere 268th rank can't stop me at all." He found that the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad had become a lot calmer after 2 years of accumulation. It was undoubtedly much steadier than the arrogance when they first met. Perhaps it was because it had seen too many noobs and understood that Yi Shiwen was nothing at all. Perhaps it was because Yi Shiwen had beaten it badly before. In short, it was undergoing an amazing transformation. The arrogance of its whole body had also been restrained a lot. This gave Yi Shiwen a feeling of wanting to see it. This blue-eyed golden-eyed toad, as long as he could restrain his arrogance, with his talent, it would not be difficult for him to stand out, even in this deity transformation abyss where experts were as numerous as clouds. After a few years, it might even have hope of being in the top 10. Arrogant! After the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad threw this sentence coldly, it turned and left. "I hope you can do what you said." Yi Shiwen smiled faintly and did not say anything. "Yi Shiwen, this time, let me see what level you have reached. In the God transformation abyss, there are countless geniuses. There will always be someone who can stop you. I will always be able to see your strength." The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad said rather unwillingly. It could not see Yi Shiwen's strength now. If they really fought, it was not confident that it could force Yi Shiwen to use all of his strength. Now it was very clear that it was probably not Yi Shiwen's opponent. Its only purpose was to force out Yi Shiwen's true strength. In any case, it had to have a goal to chase. 2 years, let me see what kind of progress you have made in these 2 years. At this time, the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was far from the only one who was paying attention to Yi Shiwen's strength. Others were also paying attention to Yi Shiwen's strength, but not so openly. Everyone wanted to know how much progress he had made in these 2 years. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly descended from the sky. A group of about 20 or 30 people appeared. As soon as they arrived, they seemed to cover the sky. That huge momentum even made the air stagnate. These people did not have the slightest intention of giving up on restraining the momentum of their bodies. The leader was a bald man wearing a loose robe. His face was full of scars. It was unknown how many times he had been cut to form these scars. He looked somewhat ferocious and terrifying. Scarface Vincent. Monkey spat out these 4 words with an ominous glint in his eyes. Even his fangs were showing. Yi Shiwen only needed to look at Monkey's appearance to know that he must have suffered a big loss in the hands of this bald man. He looked over. Sure enough, this bald man was indeed extraordinary. The people behind him, without exception, were all existences above the 8th level of Paoang realm. Nearly half of them were at the peak of the 8th level of Paoang realm. But this bald man was even stronger. He actually directly entered the 9th level of Paoang realm. Although it was obvious that he had entered the 9th level of Paoang realm not long ago, this realm alone was enough to firmly suppress everyone present. No wonder even Monkey suffered a loss in his hands. Sun Qingtian, TSK. Compared to half a year ago, you don't seem to have made much progress. But it's a pity that I have already entered the 9th level of Paoang realm. I can even make it to the top 100. What should I do? The gap between us is getting bigger and bigger. The bald man looked at Monkey with a smile. The scars on his face trembled along with his muscles, looking even more ferocious and terrifying. This time, you better pray that you don't meet me. Otherwise, I will still beat you up on the spot. 3-eyed heavenly monkey? I don't think so. What do you mean by seeing yin and yang, connecting heaven and earth? It's all just a rumor. However, I'm not here to look for you this time. I'm here to look for one of you called Yi Shiwen, right? Chapter 2163. However, this time, I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for someone named Yi Shiwen among you. The bald man's gaze swept directly to everyone. Soon, he found the person he was looking for from everyone's gaze. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen. Naturally, they knew who he was looking for. Yi Shiwen? The bald man tilted his neck, and then his expression was a bit unfriendly. He grinned and said, "You're the one who killed Yao Xingyan, right? Well done, hee, but he was originally my target. I suffered a big loss in his hands. Now, I'm about to take revenge, but you're one step ahead of me. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me for my loss?" Compensate for your loss? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but laugh. The bald man spoke as if he had caused a huge loss to him. Are you kidding me? The bald man sneered and said, Look at me. Do I look like I'm kidding? Do you know how long I've wanted to beat him up? It's been 30 years, and now I finally have this opportunity. I stepped into the 9th level of Paoang realm faster than him, but he died in your hands. Do you know how I felt when I heard the news? It's none of my business. Yi Shiwen spat out these words coldly. He didn't take the bald man's words to heart at all. Good, you're bold enough. No wonder you dared to kill Yao Xingyan. The bald man laughed and said, But since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then don't blame me. Now that your bounty is quite high, there are more than 1 or 2 people who want to kill you. After killing you, I can also get enough compensation from Yao Xingqin. This is a good deal. Yi Shiwen tilted his head and looked at him, and said, Want to kill me? Let's see if you have this ability. Many people have threatened me in the past, but they have been dead for a long time now. I think you're no exception. Ha 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 ha, you're really arrogant. I've met someone who's even more arrogant than me. The bald man's eyes flashed with killing intent. How dare you threaten me? You're just a newcomer. I want to see how capable you are. Now, before the competition starts, let me test your strength. He opened his mouth and spat out a long saber. He held the long saber in his hand and stared at Yi Shiwen fiercely. You want to compete with me? You're still far from it. This saber of mine was left behind by the ancient wind god. It's invincible and can cut through the sky. He brandished the long saber in his hand, and the air instantly froze. He controlled all the power of the wind attribute, and with a single slash, even gods and demons would have to flee. Eat my blade first. Let me see how strong you are. He let out a loud roar and slashed out with an earth-shattering slash. The air surged and boiled, cutting the sky into pieces. It was a direct display of his terrifying strength. When Monkey saw the saber, his expression immediately turned serious. Compared to half a year ago, the Baldy's strength was not just a little bit stronger. It was as if a fundamental transformation had taken place. Boom! The long saber fiercely slashed into the ground, and tore a terrifying crack that was tens of kilometers long. Yi Shiwen stood motionless, and the saber slashed directly beside him. The strong astral wind directly blew against his clothes, and made a flapping sound. The slash missed? Everyone was a little stunned. Could it be that the slash missed and actually slashed directly beside Yi Shiwen? They were a little dumbfounded. As a legendary master, how could this Baldy make such a childish mistake? Especially those who came with the Baldy, they were a little dumbfounded at this time. Could it be that they all saw wrongly? You dodged quite fast. The Baldy smiled coldly. The scar on his face twisted together, looking even more ferocious. At this time, everyone understood that it was not the bald man's slash that missed, but Yi Shiwen had dodged it. It was just that his speed was so fast that everyone had an illusion, thinking that he did not dodge, and that the Bladiki had directly slashed past his body. In fact, it did not miss, and the place where the Bladiki had passed was exactly where Yi Shiwen was standing just now. How can it be so fast? That saber contains endless wind attribute laws. It can almost be said that it has completely grasped the word fast, but he actually dodged it unscathed. Moreover, it looks so simple and effortless. Everyone had an illusion. However, they were more shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. It was 1,000 times or even 10,000 times more difficult to evade the attack. However, Yi Shiwen had done it. This was something that no one else could do. The power of the wind attribute itself was a kind of power that was extremely fast. This showed that Yi Shiwen's movement technique was probably extraordinary. Monkey did not speak. Just now, he vaguely saw a little shadow, but it was just a flash. Even he did not have time to react. Everything happened too fast. You are nothing. It turns out that this is all you have? Yi Shiwen said. Saber techniques should not be used like this. The Baldy's expression suddenly changed, and he looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. You dare to lecture me? So what? You want to put on airs in front of me? You are still far from it. If this was in reality, you would have died 1,000 times. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. Ha 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 ha, this is really funny. I want to see how I will die 1,000 times. The Baldy shouted, and the long saber in his hand once again clanged. There was a sonorous sound, and in an instant, 1,000-foot saber light directly slashed from his hand. It split the sky, and suddenly fell towards Yi Shiwen. It was a bit faster than before. All the saber light was almost forced into a thin line. It was already so fast that it could not be seen by the naked eye. In an instant, it had already slashed directly towards Yi Shiwen's head. Look carefully. Apart from here, it is impossible for you to know how you will die. Yi Shiwen shouted, and in an instant, he directly grabbed the saber light that had been forced into a thin line. Bang! There was a loud noise, and the thin line directly manifested into a monstrous saber light. It turned out that it was caught by someone. Yi Shiwen caught this monstrous saber light without any difficulty. This saber light that was said to be able to destroy the world kept struggling in Yi Shiwen's hand, but it was useless. Boom! This saber light was directly crushed by Yi Shiwen's bare hand. Like broken glass, it shattered into countless fragments and disappeared into the sky. Look carefully, didn't you say that you are fast? Let's see if you can take my punch. Yi Shiwen's voice just fell, and his figure had already appeared in front of the Baldy. The bald man's eyes almost popped out of their socket. His speed was too fast. In the next second, he had pounced on him. It was as if he had torn the space apart. However, He didn't have the spatial fluctuations that could tear the void apart. No, he was even faster than tearing the space apart and teleporting. Bang! He didn't know when Yi Shiwen's fist had already blasted into his body. When the terrible power raged in his body, he finally realized that he had been blasted by Yi Shiwen. How is this possible? He only had time to shout this sentence, and his whole body instantly exploded in the air. He didn't have time to react at all, and the entire void was blasted into a big hole. One move, only one move, and it was in the aspect of speed that the Baldy was best at. Yi Shiwen had defeated him without any suspense. Even if one was picky and unwilling to admit it, at this time, it was difficult for him to say anything, because he really had no face to say anything. Huff, huff, huff. The Baldy's figure appeared in the space again, and he was constantly panting, as if he was still in a state of shock. At that moment, he was actually blown up by Yi Shiwen. He was right, if it was in reality, he would probably be dead. His eyes were full of surprise and doubt. Perhaps he never dreamed that he would be forced into a corner by Yi Shiwen. Then, he finally reacted. This is your first time participating in the competition, and it will also be your last. Work hard. As long as you don't get eliminated, you will definitely meet me. At that time, I will let you know how terrifying the consequences of angering me are. Yi Shiwen's eyes were bloodshot. I will definitely kill you, I will kill you. This time, you should be thankful for your good luck. At least here, you won't die. But in the blood prison, you won't be able to live for long. This is your first time participating in the competition, and it will also be your last. He had underestimated Yi Shiwen too much just now. He never expected Yi Shiwen's speed to be so fast. He didn't even have the chance to display his strength, and was blown up on the spot. He was a little frightened in his heart. If it was in reality, wouldn't he be killed before he could react? In the face of this murderer who killed him, there was only endless resentment left in his heart. He couldn't wait to kill Yi Shiwen to vent the hatred in his heart. Wait until you have the ability to meet me. Yi Shiwen looked at him indifferently. He didn't care at all. Perhaps the Baldy hadn't displayed his true strength, but wasn't Yi Shiwen the same? Good, good, good. You have guts. Let's go. There will be plenty of opportunities to entertain you in the blood prison in the future. The Baldy only felt that the people around him were looking at him with ridicule. He didn't want to stay for a moment longer, so he quickly turned around and left. Ha ha ha, well done. This guy is arrogant and despotic. I have long wanted to deal with him. If it weren't for the fact that I'm not strong enough now, I would have already killed him. Monkey stepped forward and said with a smile, however, he is not a person who will give up easily. I'm afraid he will really sneak into the blood prison at that time. That's great. I'll kill him in reality. I want to see if he can be resurrected. Chapter 2164. I haven't seen him for 2 years, and he's even more arrogant. Blue-eyed Golden Toad couldn't help but mutter to himself. Everyone didn't know what to say. It could be said that Yi Shiwen was arrogant, but he had just defeated a master of the Paong 9th layer in one move. It could be said that he was not arrogant, but his words were indeed a bit arrogant. They hadn't seen him for 2 years, and his strength seemed to have increased to the extreme. An expert at the 9th level of the Paong realm was killed. Although it was a surprise attack, he had done it. Compared to 2 years ago, his strength was much stronger. Some people originally thought that he might not have made any progress in the past 2 years. Now that they thought about it, it was ridiculous. He was already so strong 2 years ago, how could he not have made any progress now? However, everyone had to admit that it was possible for him to do it in reality. Although his enemies were not easy to deal with, and 2 of them were top 10 experts, he was not someone to be trifled with. If someone wanted to bully him, they had to see if they had the strength to do so. Many people had a feeling in their hearts that they might also have to go to the blood prison. As long as they could stay, they would definitely go to the blood prison. Otherwise, the gap between them and Yi Shiwen would only get bigger and bigger. Dang, dang, dang. Loud bell sounds tore through the sky, reverberating throughout the entire ethereal extent. The tokens on everyone's bodies emitted rays of light, forming a door of light in front of them. The rookies who had participated a few times weren't unfamiliar with this. Behind the door of light was everyone's opponent. In other words, they would be directly transported to the arena of the competition. After all, the entire virtual realm was very large, and the people who appeared in the virtual realm were scattered according to the area where they lived. It would take a long time for them to arrive. Although Yi Shiwen had not participated in it, he was not unfamiliar with it. He had asked Elder Kong about it before. He took a deep breath, and his eyes were deep. This was the last competition before he went to the blood prison. He also wanted to test himself. After 2 years, he wanted to see what level he had reached and what position he could rank in the 3rd division. He directly stepped into the light gate and appeared on a small island with an area of more than 1,000 meters. This small island would be the venue for his battle. He had obviously arrived first. His opponent hadn't arrived yet. While he was still observing, his opponent had already arrived. A figure broke through the void and entered. It was a young man who looked no different from a human. His face was like jade, and he was extraordinarily handsome. However, his fists were a little different. They were in a crystalline state, sparkling and translucent. At a glance, one could tell that they were extraordinary. The man glanced at Yi Shiwen and frowned. He then said, "You're not my opponent. Surrender. Otherwise I'll beat you up. Then, you won't even have a place to cry." How flamboyant! Yi Shiwen didn't even have a chance to speak. He had asked him to surrender as soon as he came up. His imposing manner was so overbearing that he didn't give Yi Shiwen any opportunity to speak. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw that this young man indeed had the confidence to speak. His cultivation was already at the peak of the 8th level of Paong realm. Compared to the blue-eyed golden toad and the others, he was not the slightest bit inferior. Yi Shiwen estimated that with such a cultivation, he could easily enter the top 300. With such a cultivation, he would basically not encounter any strong opponents in the first few rounds. In order to avoid bad luck and being eliminated by an opponent who was too strong, the competition here was not decided in 1 round. Instead, everyone had to compete. After 10 rounds, according to each person's record, winning time, winning opponents, etc., the final ranking would be determined. The top 100 would be the seeded contestants. They would not appear at the beginning, but would only appear after the contestants had competed for more than 7 rounds. Their previous 7 rounds were calculated based on full mark. Although this was unfair to the people behind, there was no such thing as 100% fairness in this world. As the top 100 contestants appeared in advance, whether they were eliminated or others were eliminated, it was the greatest injustice. Your strength is not bad. It's a pity that you're going to be eliminated here. Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said. There was no sign of surrender in advance. What did you say? The young man raised his sword-like eyebrows and his tone suddenly became serious. He looked at Yi Shiwen with a rather unfriendly gaze. You're just a little Paong realm 7th level. You're still a newcomer this time. It's already not bad for a newcomer to have the cultivation of Paong realm 7th level. Even if you lose to me, you may still have a chance later. If you obediently retreat, you can still save a trace of face, but now you have no chance, because you have completely angered me. While speaking, he instantly attacked, and then stepped out. His fingertips directly pointed out an amazing sword aura. The mighty sword aura directly broke the void, cutting the sky into 2 halves. Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised. In this god transformation abyss, there were indeed countless evildoers. This young man's cultivation, compared to Yao Xingyan 2 years ago, was not the slightest bit worse. He was already at the peak of Pawang Realm 8th level, just a little bit more to break into Pawang Realm 9th level. Once he succeeded, he would be at the same level as the bald old man. Such a person, if placed in the outside world, would probably be invincible in the world, but here it was only the first match of the competition, and he already met such a person. However, he was only a little surprised. He stepped out again, and his clothes fluttered wildly. The sword aura directly rushed over and blasted into his body, but there was no ripple at all, and it was directly swallowed by the divinity on the surface of his body. What? How is this possible? The young man was suddenly shocked. He never thought that the sword that he was very confident in could not even hurt him. This was even more terrifying than being easily taken down by him. He could not even hurt him, how could he play? What a lunatic! Just what was his physical body made of? And at this moment Yi Shiwen made his move and shouted, "Watch carefully!" He directly raised his hand and blasted out with his sword. The sword aura condensed into a terrifying long river of swordsmanship, mighty and mighty, falling from the sky and suddenly blasted down. Boom! The terrifying sword aura rushed into his chest, and the young man was blasted out on the spot. His whole body suddenly exploded into a mist of blood. With just one move, a master at the 8th level of Pawang Realm was blasted to death by him. There was no difference. If 2 years ago, he needed to use martial arts incarnation to deal with a master of this level, then now, he could almost be said to be able to kill him completely without any effort. Looking at the battle between him and Yao Xingyan 2 years ago, and looking at the current situation, he could almost be said to be able to defeat this young man with similar strength as Yao Xingyan easily. It could be seen that his progress in the past few years was probably far beyond everyone's imagination. After easily ending the first round of battle, Yi Shiwen directly walked out of the arena. At this time, there was only Yi Shiwen in the arena, and at this time there was no one coming out. He was a little surprised, and turned out to be the blue-eyed golden toad, who came out earlier than the monkey. Blue-eyed golden toad saw Yi Shiwen, and was a little surprised. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so fast. Presumably, he had also encountered some weak trash. But thinking about it, with Yi Shiwen's strength, under the circumstances that the top 100 seeded players did not appear, it was unlikely that he would encounter any trouble in the first few rounds. But this time, it also won easily, so it did not say much. After it, the monkey and the young man with the sword also came out, and then many other newcomers came out one after another. However, some of them had a happy look on their faces, while others looked very lonely. Obviously, they had lost. Because it was in the void, the physical body was condensed by the rules of the void, so there was no need to worry about the problem of continuous battles. Therefore, once everyone started fighting, they would do their best. So, once they were defeated here, they could not say anything. Damn, this time I actually encountered that freak, Jun Dingtian. It's him again. I heard that he only came a few years earlier than us, but his strength is not something we can compare with. That's right, it's him. I didn't even have time to say anything. He killed me in one move. Damn it, I met such a troublesome guy in the first round. I heard that he almost made it into the top 100 last time and became a seeded player. I'm afraid he's even stronger this time. Yi Shiwen, who was originally leisurely, suddenly had a fierce look in his eyes when he heard the name Jun Dingtian. Jun Dingtian, he had been looking for him for a long time. Previously, he, young Master Ghost Fortune, and young Master Celestial Fox had joined forces to seriously injure Hua Menghan. He had not settled the score, but Jun Dingtian had disappeared. Now, with the deaths of young Master Ghost Fortune and young Master Celestial Fox, only Jun Dingtian was still alive. Heaven did not disappoint those who persevered. It seemed that Jun Dingtian was also in the deification abyss. Since he was still in the deification abyss, it was fine. Sooner or later, they would meet, and both sides would have the opportunity to fight. The newcomer who was killed by Jun Dingtian was not weak either. He had already entered the 8th level of Paong realm, but he was still killed by Jun Dingtian. Yi Shiwen secretly felt that it was a pity. He was killed before he could even find out Jun Dingtian's strength. It was really a pity. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. He also wanted to know how much Jun Dingtian had improved after all these years. Jun Dingtian, wait for me to take your head. While waiting, the second round of the competition had already begun. Chapter 2165. Compared to the opponent in the first round, the opponent in the second round was weaker, but it was not in the form of a human, but a flood dragon. It was very powerful, only a little bit away from transforming into a real dragon. This made Yi Shiwen a little strange. One must know that flood dragons were regarded as ferocious beasts in other places, and they were regarded as peerless geniuses in human form. But in a place like Deity Transformation Abyss, real dragons were nothing, let alone a mere flood dragon. This flood dragon was not simple. Let me swallow you in one bite. The flood dragon looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. There was a hint of joy on his face. They were both in the 7th heaven of Paong realm, and he had already reached the peak of the 7th heaven of Paong realm. It was much better than this rookie who had just entered the 7th heaven of Paong realm. Although he did not know how such a rookie could survive at this time, but letting him win one more round would reduce the risk of being eliminated in the end. Suddenly, accompanied by a terrifying roar, this flood dragon's body suddenly crazily spewed dragon yuan in all directions. In an instant, a huge momentum had appeared, suddenly filling the entire battle space, exuding an unparalleled awe-inspiring momentum. He was only a little bit away from transforming into a real dragon. The blood in his whole body had almost been purified, and there was no difference between him and an ordinary real dragon. At this time, he had fully possessed the mighty aura of a real dragon. The power was very great. Humph! This flood dragon snorted coldly, and the next moment, it had already appeared behind Yi Shiwen. It directly tore the space on the spot, without any hindrance, and its speed was also amazing. Then he saw it open its bloody mouth, and countless waves came out from it, and then turned into a terrible energy frenzy, directly sweeping out, blasting towards Yi Shiwen's back. Bang! Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand, and directly smashed this mass of light into pieces. You are not my opponent, there is no harm in admitting defeat. What, you want me to surrender, in your dreams? The flood dragon roared angrily. It couldn't care less about the fact that Yi Shiwen had easily broken its attack. The only thing left in it was anger. The human in front of it simply didn't know what was good for him. A mere early stage of the 7th level of the Paong realm actually dared to challenge him, an existence at the peak of the 7th level of the Paong realm. Wasn't that putting the cart before the horse? The dragon yuan in his entire body was trembling. Countless forces were condensing towards the center. Without any extra movements, he condensed countless martial arts insights into this monstrous force and blasted it down. That terrifying scene formed an incomparably powerful image that directly suppressed Yi Shiwen. Stubborn fool! Yi Shiwen sneered. He stretched out one hand and directly condensed a seal, which directly suppressed the energy on the spot. The endless energy seemed to have been locked. Then, the entire seal continued to expand until it locked the flood dragon within it. The dragon lock technique had locked the flood dragon in one move. Boom! Then, the entire seal was crushed. In just an instant it was crushed on the spot. Ah! The flood dragon screamed as it was crushed to death. Yi Shiwen easily won the second round and instantly left the arena. He was the first to come out. Whether it was the 7th level of the Paong realm or the 8th level, they could not pose any threat to him. When he came out, there was still no one. After a while, the newcomers came out one after another. Some looked ugly, some were happy. There were wins and losses, but in general, there were more failures than successes. Everyone saw that Yi Shiwen had indeed appeared early again. At this time, they were already used to it. There was nothing strange about it. With Yi Shiwen's amazing strength, it would be strange if he could not easily defeat his opponent. This battle was obviously much longer than before. Obviously, there were still people still fighting. Soon, the third round began. This time, Yi Shiwen's opponent was a normal 8th level of the Paong realm. This was considered normal. However, he encountered a peak of the 8th level of the Paong realm in the first round, which was a bit unusual. It should have been his bad luck, but his opponent was easily crushed by him. It was unknown who was the unlucky one. The third round was also easily resolved with one move. Although they were all legends and the realm was similar, the difference in strength was huge. When it came to the third round, there were even more failures among the crowd. The opponents he encountered were also getting stronger. Then came the third, fourth, and fifth round. He easily passed all of them. However, Yi Shiwen's opponents were also getting stronger. In the fifth round, there was another 8th level of the Paong realm. He was only half a step away from entering the 9th level of the Paong realm. There were even some trump cards that could compete with the 9th level of the Paong realm. However, they were not his opponents and were easily defeated by him. In the sixth round, the opponents Yi Shiwen encountered were also getting stronger. Generally speaking, the opponents he encountered were also related to the previous record. Basically, the more times he won, the stronger the opponent he encountered. If he had won all the way up, then all the opponents he had encountered would also have won all the way up, and none of them would be weak. As for being killed by Yi Shiwen in seconds, that could only be attributed to their bad luck. They had encountered a hidden abnormality like Yi Shiwen. Compared to the previous 5 rounds, the 6th round was the battle that everyone was looking forward to. This was because in the 7th round, the seeded participants that had been hidden for a long time would all come out to fight, and their opponents would be the opponents that had won all 6 rounds. In other words, the contestants who won all the 6th round were truly qualified to compete with the seed players. They were either at the 9th level of the Paong realm or had the means to compete with the 9th level of the Paong realm like Yi Shiwen. From the beginning of this round, it was called the seed match by busybodies. Although the other matches were still going on, it was impossible to attract the attention of the crowd. Only those who could advance to the 6th round and not be defeated could really attract everyone's attention. In the distant space, hundreds of people were paying attention to the battles below. They might not have cared about the first few rounds of battles because those people weren't qualified to be their opponents. But now, the 6th round was different. Those who were successful would become their opponent. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. They did not want to be overtaken by these challengers. And among these hundreds of people, there were 10 people who were completely different from the others. They were the strongest among these seed disciples. Each of them was a peerless master, and each of their actions implied the truth of the Great Way. And among these people, a young man stood with his arms crossed and his eyes were cold. He was staring at one of the arenas, and it was the arena where Yi Shiwen was at. He had seen the whole battle just now. I didn't expect that he actually has some skills. No wonder Xingyan died in his hand. The young man slowly said. He and Yao Xingyan were 70% or 80% similar. He was Yao Xingyan's elder brother, and now one of the top 10 in the 3rd district, Yao Xingqing. Let's join forces and get rid of him. We will divide the fortuitous encounter equally. I just want him to die. At this moment, another figure appeared beside him. It was a young man who looked to be in his late 20s. He was dressed in a royal robe and exuded an air of nobility. His every movement exuded an air of nobility that was on par with Yao Xingqing's proud and aloof temperament. What is there to covet from him? Yao Xingqing was not moved. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, but he didn't want to become someone else's weapon. You don't know this, but my master, Tiger Head Sage, died in his hands. But at that time, I investigated him and found that he had just entered the legendary realm. How long has it been? Even the 8th sky of Paong realm was easily killed by him. This shows that he must have had some fortuitous encounter. Don't you have any interest in it? The young man in the imperial robe couldn't help but say. This person was none other than the disciple of Tiger Head Sage, Jing Tianlei. Although he was in closed-door training, he only needed to separate a wisp of his spirit to participate in this kind of competition. Basically, anyone who could participate would naturally participate. All right, we will each send people to the blood prison. We must kill this kid. I won't be at ease if I don't kill him, Yao Xingqing said indifferently. Both of them had already finalized this matter while they were talking. Both of them were in the top 10, and were only half a step away from the Dao confirming realm. Which one of them didn't have their own pride and self-esteem? If he continues to win like this, maybe he will meet me. At that time, I will let him know what it means to live a life worse than death. Death is a reward for him, Yao Xingqing said indifferently. Can he persist until then? It's already a miracle for him to persist until now with his realm, Jing Tianlei said with a sneer. On the other side, Huyen Aanu was also paying attention to Yi Shiwen and said, he has some ability. It's not in vain that brother Ing Tianjing thinks so highly of him. How far can he go? Do your best and show everyone your talent before going to the blood prison. Otherwise, it won't be good if you die quietly in there. He knew very well that this kind of competition seemed to be held once every 6 months. It was too frequent and no one seemed to care about it. However, the real big shots at the top were paying attention to this matter. Yi Shiwen wouldn't die an unknown death only if he could enter the eyes of these big shots. Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know that so many people were paying attention to him. He had already entered the arena. Yi Shiwen, I've been waiting for you for a long time. His opponent in the 6th round was actually the bald old man. Chapter 2166. The bald man grinned as he looked at Yi Shiwen. His eyes flickered with a deep-seated hatred. He had been humiliated by Yi Shiwen in front of his younger brother. This was a great humiliation for him. He would never forget this humiliation for the rest of his life. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to reach this step. Now that you've reached this step, consider yourself lucky. However, your good luck ends here, because this time, your opponent is me. The bald man said coldly. Do you remember how I killed you with one punch? If you have any last words, say it quickly, otherwise it will be too late to say anything later. Yi Shiwen stood still indifferently. Even in the face of the suppression of a top master of the Paong realm, he was not moved at all. You are courting death? The bald man's face suddenly became cold. I am at the 9th level of the Paong realm, the peak of the mythical realm. Who do you think you are? Previously, you just took advantage of me. This time, if you want to get away with it, then don't even think about it. He opened his mouth and spat out a treasured saber. He grabbed it in his hand, and suddenly, even the surrounding air solidified. The law of the wind attribute continued to entangle, revealing a mysterious aura. At this moment, he was almost like the reincarnation of the wind god, using his true strength. Compared to when he fought with Yi Shiwen before, he did not use his full strength at all. In other words, he was stunned by Yi Shiwen's attack. He didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be so fierce. But this time, he was different. He used his full strength, and didn't give Yi Shiwen any chance to exploit any loopholes. Swish! He slashed out all the law of the wind attribute, turning into a god, and directly rushed out. All of them vibrated out, killing any master of the Paong realm or the 8th level. The space between his eyebrows had already turned into a light green color, completely fusing with the wind attribute. At this moment, he was the greatest representative of the law of the wind attribute, a god walking in the world. This saber burst out with the real power to destroy the sky. Yi Shiwen, let's see how you dodge this time. His voice hadn't even faded when the blade light had already swept onto Yi Shiwen's body. It was like teleportation. Yi Shiwen was still far away from Yi Shiwen at first, but in an instant, Yi Shiwen had completely pounced on him. It descended in an instant, not giving him any chance to dodge. Clearly, it had suffered enough and learned its lesson from last time. At this moment, many people were looking at this match with contempt. Although there were hundreds of matches going on at the same time, but this match had become the one that countless people were paying the most attention to because of the existence of Yi Shiwen. Vincent's strength is not bad. I heard that he has been stuck at the peak of the 8th level of Paong for decades. If he doesn't make any more breakthroughs, he will be eliminated early. Now it seems that he still has some potential. I heard that when Vincent first entered the Paong state, he received the inheritance of a deity. Over the years, his cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds. Although he can't be compared to us, he's not bad. Maybe he will have the opportunity to be on the same level as us in the future. That's the blade technique inherited from the wind god. It is said that in the blade he obtained, there is the inheritance of a deity. Its power is infinite. No one can block such a blade. What a fast speed! He's even faster than some of us. Maybe some of us will fall at his hands. Among the top 100 experts, some people's faces changed. They were all at the bottom of the top 100 experts. If they were not careful, they might be overturned by the people behind them. Those who were ranked at the top, especially the top 10, were not worried at all. But they had to pay attention to this problem. Whether it was Yi Shiwen or Scarface Vincent, it was possible that they would be overturned. However, just when they all thought that Yi Shiwen could not block it at all, the extremely fast long blade stopped 3 inches in front of Yi Shiwen, as if it was blocked by something. Boom! The long blade seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. It set off a monstrous airwave, instantly spreading in all directions, turning into a terrifying shock wave, but it was blocked by Yi Shiwen. At this time, everyone could clearly see that a 5 elements great array had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was like a huge turntable, and it was slowly rotating, blocking all the blade light that was rushing towards him. It's useless. You want to block me with just an ordinary 5 elements great formation? Don't even think about it. The bald man kept roaring, his face was cold, and a monstrous aura rose from his whole body. He increased his power, wanting to break through all of Yi Shiwen's defenses in one fell swoop. Yi Shiwen's 5 elements great formation actually had layers of broken space. Cracks appeared, as if it would be broken in the next second. The bald man's face showed a bit of a grin. Finally, he could get his revenge. And in this situation, the power of the 5 elements around Yi Shiwen's body frantically gathered towards his body, and the 5 Emperor's battle armor was instantly put on. Boom! His aura instantly became more tyrannical, and suddenly went up another level, as if the most amazing transformation had occurred. Then, one of his hands suddenly stretched out as fast as lightning, causing those who had been watching to feel dizzy and nauseous to the point of wanting to vomit. Boom! At that moment, his big hand clenched into a fist and blasted out the surging mortal world. The human doctrine fist, at the most critical moment, exerted its amazing power. Yi Shiwen was like an ancient emperor who had been reborn at this time. Boom! The human doctrine fist directly blasted on the thousands of feet long blade auras. With a scream, the blade auras shattered inch by inch, but the terrible power directly blasted on the bald man's body along with the shattered blade auras. The bald man was immediately bombarded by Yi Shiwen's attack. Although the majority of the power had been absorbed by the shattered blade light, the remaining part still instantly inflicted serious injuries on him. His entire body was sent flying upside down. He had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen in just one move. It was just one move, but the blade auras that seemed to be able to seriously injure a master at the 9th level of Paong realm was completely broken by Yi Shiwen. The bald man directly fell to the ground, and a huge crack was blasted out. He kept groaning. The bones in his chest had been seriously injured and broken by Yi Shiwen. At this time, his face was even more abnormally ugly. You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with only this level? You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with only this level? What wind god's inheritance? It's all bullshit. You have cultivated for so many years, but you only know how to bully newcomers. In this deification abyss, you have cultivated for dozens of years, but you have lived like a dog. Unexpectedly, you are only at this level. If I were you, I would have already committed suicide in shame. The bald man was so angry that he directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was trembling. Arrogant! Insolent! You are really lawless. Among the top 100, there were constantly people who opened their mouths to reprimand. It was as if Yi Shiwen had poked their Achilles heel, and they were in an uproar. Although Yi Shiwen was talking about the bald man in their ears, it became a mockery of themselves. The bald man had cultivated for decades, but he had just broken into the 9th level of Paong realm, so he was reprimanded by Yi Shiwen as trash. As for them, even if they were better than the bald man, they were also like the bald man. They had decades of cultivation, plus thousands of years of hard work before, to reach where they were today. Usually, they were not dissatisfied with their progress, because the people around them were the same. Even compared to the masters in other places, their speed should be very, very fast. There was only regret in their hearts, and nothing else. But as the saying goes, comparing people to people is infuriating, and comparing goods to goods, you have to throw them away. Their level of advancement was considered brave and fierce, but compared to Yi Shiwen, it seemed to be nothing at all. Indeed, they were like trash. Compared to Yi Shiwen, what was the difference between them and trash? Therefore, even if Yi Shiwen's words were not directed at them, they instantly took it as a reference, and their impression of Yi Shiwen immediately became extremely bad. Those who did not attract jealousy were mediocre. There was no doubt that Yi Shiwen was now a tall tree that attracted the wind. Originally, many people were very disdainful of him, not to mention now that he dared to speak so arrogantly. Roar! The bald man let out a deafening roar like an injured beast. In the void, a huge mutated beast appeared. It was a mutated beast that controlled the wind attribute. It was the incarnation of the wind attribute condensed by the bald man, and it instantly fused with his body. Almost at that moment, the bald man jumped up from the ground. Yi Shiwen, die! An amazing blade light directly cut through the sky, and instantly appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. Its speed increased by more than a little. After integrating with the martial arts incarnation, the strength of the bald man was obviously a lot more tyrannical. Yi Shiwen's complexion didn't change. The devil wings behind him spread open. His toes fiercely touched the ground, and his figure directly swept backwards. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown hundreds of miles away. He directly retreated to the edge of the arena, and barely avoided this astonishing blade attack. This was the true strength of a master of Paong Realm 9th level. Ha ha ha, Yi Shiwen, see? This is my true strength, go to hell. The bald man's eyes flashed with madness, and directly slashed down with his blade. Just SOSO, now I will let you see my true strength, Yi Shiwen said lightly, and behind him, the martial arts incarnation directly integrated into it. Boom! 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 The aura on his body suddenly rose in circles, and it was extremely terrifying. Look, I said, you can't even block a punch. Chapter 2167. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist momentum was unparalleled. Yi Shiwen's punch destroyed everything in its path. The power of the mortal world was vast and mighty, and it directly swept out. It was a shocking sight. The sky was shattered into two halves, and it directly fell on the bald man's body. Bang! The bald man screamed on the spot and was killed directly. Yi Shiwen, who had just entered the 9th level of Paong realm, was no match for him after he had unleashed his power. After winning 6 rounds smoothly, Yi Shiwen breathed a sigh of relief. With these 6 consecutive victories, even if Yi Shiwen did not win the next round, he would not be eliminated. After all, those who could reach this point, without exception, could be regarded as the top masters and would not be easily eliminated. So strong, this set of fist technique, is it the legendary unique skill of the Azura Demon King, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist? It's really amazing. As a level 7 heavens of Paong, he was able to make it this far. He is truly unprecedented and will never be able to do so. Yao Shengqing's face was ugly, his eyes fixed on Yi Shiwen. The power of the punch just now had directly soared to the peak, and even for a short time, it could even compete with the power of the ordinary 9th level of the Paong realm. Although it was still not his opponent, it was enough. If he was allowed to grow, it would inevitably become a big problem. He turned, looked at Jing Tianlei on the side, and said, "Arrange for him to die as soon as he goes in, and bring his head to see me." "No problem," Jing Tianlei said faintly. His face was not very good. The stronger Yi Shiwen was, the greater the threat to him. He absolutely did not want to see Yi Shiwen grow. As long as there was a way to kill him, he must kill him. After Yi Shiwen came out, he found that there were still not many people around. He was still the first to come out. After a long time, many people came out of the arena. When they saw Yi Shiwen, they were a little stunned. Everyone was very clear that Yi Shiwen had won 5 consecutive battles. In other words, the opponent he was going to face was also a strong master who had won 5 consecutive battles. This kind of strong master, at least, was at the peak of the 8th level of the Paong realm, or even the 9th level of the Paong realm. The difficulty could be imagined, but he actually defeated his opponent so quickly. From the looks of it, he didn't know that he had been dealt with by the other party. He could only keep feeling speechless in his heart. The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad looked at Yi Shiwen with a complicated look in its eyes. The stronger Yi Shiwen was, the smaller the hope of redressing the humiliation. Although there was not much hope now, it was better than despair. If he won this round, he would probably have to face the seeded players in the next round. If he won the 7th round, he would almost certainly be in the top 100. It was just a matter of ranking. When everyone thought of this, they couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Although they had tried to catch up countless times, they were left behind by Yi Shiwen every time. 2 years ago, he had already far surpassed everyone, and now, it was even possible for him to break into the top 100 in his first attempt. With such strength, he was not considered weak in the 3rd district of the deity transformation abyss. "You won the 6th round?" Monkey walked over and asked. "Yes." Yi Shiwen didn't hide it and nodded directly. "Good, you're really good. If you go one step further, you can break Jun Dingtian's record. In the past 1,000 years, apart from you, he is the only one who broke into the 7th round on his first attempt," Monkey said with a smile. He and the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad also died in the 5th round and failed to break into the 6th round. The opponents they encountered were far stronger than them. "If you can break into the 7th and 8th round, we can also hold our heads high." "I don't plan to continue the 7th round," Yi Shiwen said lightly. "What?" Monkey opened his eyes wide and couldn't help but say in disbelief. "Why don't you continue?" "Anyway, I have enough point. I won't be eliminated no matter what," Yi Shiwen said lightly. It was not necessary to participate in this kind of semi-annual competition. It was just that if he didn't participate once, his ranking would naturally drop by 50 places. If he participated a few more times, he would naturally fall out of the top 1,000. In that case, no matter how talented he was, he would be kicked out. There was no other possibility. Of course, this was only the top masters had this treatment. Those who were ranked at the bottom had to participate in the competition every time. Otherwise, their ranking would continue to drop, and they would naturally fall out of the competition. They might not even need to participate in the competition. Monkey smiled a little helplessly. Speaking of which, it was true. However, people like Yi Shiwen who didn't care at all were rare. Even so, there is no need for you to give up so easily. You should know that you have already made it into the top 200. As long as you win one more match, you will naturally enter the top 100. You should know that the points obtained from the top 200 are completely different from the points obtained from the top 100, Monkey said, a puzzled look on his face. Because now, I'm afraid that Yao Xingqing and Jing Tianlei hate me to the core. They have already begun to prepare to intercept and kill me in the blood prison. How can I let them prepare? Maybe even their bodies have already gone to the blood prison. If I wait until the competition is over and then go there, won't I be caught red-handed by them? Yi Shiwen said. Since he had done so, he naturally had his own plans. Yi Shiwen had calculated that with his own strength, he would at least have no problem escaping if there was only Yao Xingqing and Jing Tianlei. However, he was afraid that both of them would join hands. Therefore, he had to leave as soon as possible. It would be too late if he were to participate in the competition. As for the competition, he didn't care much about it. It was fine as long as he didn't fall last and get kicked out. The next time he appeared again, his goal would be to win the championship. He would break all the shackles, defeat everyone in one go, and win the championship. His strength was still somewhat lacking compared to Yao Xingqing and Jing Tianlei. However, as long as he condensed the blade incarnation again, everything would be different. His strength would be improved again. At that time, it would be enough to sweep away everything. There was no need to be anxious at all. A little impatience would spoil a great plan. See you in 5 years. Yi Shiwen glanced at Monkey and slowly disappeared into the void. What? Yi Shiwen forfeited. Yao Xingqing had just defeated his opponent in the first round. It was a master of Paong Realm 9th level. However, he was not Yao Xingqing's opponent at all. He was defeated in one move. However, Yao Xingqing had just defeated his opponent and came back to no such news. Yi Shiwen actually forfeited. Countless wisdom flashed in his eyes. He had figured out all of Yi Shiwen's plans in an instant. He had guessed what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. Damn, he actually escaped. He must have predicted that we have an ambush, so he rushed to the blood prison first. He actually caught us off guard. Jing Tianlei also came out soon. After hearing the situation, he immediately knew Yi Shiwen's plan. These two people were peerless talents themselves. How could Yi Shiwen's plan be hidden from them? No, Yi Shiwen did not intend to hide from them at all. It was nothing more than a time difference when they were caught off guard. Once he escapes into the blood prison is so big. Finding him is like finding a needle in a haystack. It is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Yao Xingqing's eyes flickered. The blood prison was too big. Once Yi Shiwen escaped into it, it was equivalent to a fish in the sea. It was impossible to find him. Now there is no time to lose. We must rush to the blood prison immediately. We can't let him escape, said Jing Tianlei. Forfeit. We must also forfeit. We can't let him escape. Otherwise, it will not be so easy to find him again. In order to hunt down Yi Shiwen, the two quickly decided to forfeit. Otherwise, it would be impossible to catch Yi Shiwen. Soon, many people saw a strange scene. Yao Xingqing and Jing Tianlei, the two peerless masters who could enter the top 10, actually forfeited. Many masters who were close to them also forfeited at the same time. Almost all of a sudden, more than 100 people were eliminated. Many people were talking about it out of thin air. They were extremely excited. Soon, they knew why they forfeited. It was because Yi Shiwen also forfeited. They actually went to hunt down Yi Shiwen. All of a sudden, many people who were not very clear about Yi Shiwen remembered such a name. Although this person was only at the 7th level of Paong realm, he could make the two peerless masters, Jing Tianlei and Yao Xingqing, give up the competition to hunt down Yi Shiwen. What ability did he have? Even the two peerless masters were afraid of him escaping. Because of the collective forfeiture of these masters, for a time there was a lot of chaos in the arena. Because such a situation had never happened before. The blood prison was a boundless blood red. The scarlet color looked a little strange and a little scary. Endless roars of fierce beasts sounded one after another. Yi Shiwen stood at the entrance of the blood prison. The formation slowly opened. This blood prison suppressed countless tyrannical and evil existences, so it needed to be sealed with a special formation. This is... Yi Shiwen's face showed a shocked expression. The blood aura that rushed towards him gave him a familiar feeling. This is clearly the blood world in the ancient desolation. He immediately felt that this blood prison clearly had the same origin as the blood world. He could not be wrong. He had the heart of the blood world. He was very clear about the nature of the blood world. How could he not feel it? It was just that the blood world was undoubtedly much lower level compared to the blood prison. It could not be compared to the blood prison. The blood prison was a very high-level world. All kinds of laws were perfect. It was very amazing. It was just that it was sealed under the center of the deity transformation abyss. Chapter 2168. As a criminal who entered the blood prison, Yi Shiwen's treatment naturally couldn't be compared with others. He was sealed. This seal was in conflict with the enchantment at the exit of the blood prison. Once he wanted to come out, he would be detected immediately. This seal would only last for 5 years. After 5 years it would disappear. This was also a way to prevent prisoners from escaping in the blood prison. Apart from that, this seal didn't have much effect. Of course, there were some people who had committed heinous crimes and had been captured and suppressed here. Their seals wouldn't disappear automatically in 5 years like Yi Shiwen's. Yi Shiwen judged that it was likely that the blood prison was the space fragment that fell out of the blood prison back then. This was very likely. Otherwise, the two wouldn't give Yi Shiwen the feeling that they came from the same source. However, he didn't stop and directly rushed into the blood prison. After a while, he disappeared in the vast and endless blood prison. He has already entered the blood prison? Yao Xingqing received the news that Yi Shiwen had entered the blood prison when he was only a few 100,000 miles away from the blood prison. Yao Xingqing's face turned ugly, and a murderous aura filled his face. He looked abnormally hideous and terrifying. Disperse everyone. We must find him and kill him. We can't let him continue to grow like this, said Yao Xingqing. Next to him, Jing Tianlei, who arrived together with him, also had an ugly expression. He said, "Let's go. We must not let him go. Otherwise, who knows what he will grow into after 5 years." In the distance there was a blood-red mountain range. It was endless, as if everything was covered with a layer of blood. There was a large area of blood everywhere. Many powerful blood beasts were lurking in this huge space. It made Yi Shiwen feel like he had returned to the time when he just ventured into the blood prison. Although the distance was not too far, things had changed. His strength was also 100 times, 1,000 times stronger than before. Hee, another foreign creature has come to die. Eat him, I want to eat him. Such a powerful vitality. If I eat him, I can go further. As soon as Yi Shiwen entered the blood prison, he immediately attracted the covetous eyes of countless blood beasts. It was a scene of demons dancing wildly. Ordinary people would have a heart attack if they saw it. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid in the slightest. He sneered and said, "You're just a bunch of trash. Do you really think that you can covet me? His huge hand suddenly grabbed at the void space. Boundless power tore the sky apart, instantly collapsing a part of the void space. Within it, densely packed blood demons were revealed. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were innumerable. It was terrifying. Capture them all. He grabbed thousands of blood demons and crushed them. The blood demons that were still coveting Yi Shiwen's lifeblood were instantly grabbed to death by him. Many of them were mythical blood demons. In Yi Shiwen's eyes there was no difference. They were all clawed to death. The blood qi in the sky transformed into a long river and directly poured into his body. He suddenly burst into laughter. This feeling was too carefree. As he expected, the blood prison was indeed related to the blood prison. The blood qi in the sky was not ordinary. It was all blood essence, and it seemed that it was not ordinary blood essence. These blood demons were probably monsters that were born from the blood essence over a long period of time. According to the method in the blood prison, a large number of bloodstones could be condensed. However, the bloodstones condensed in the blood prison were many times more advanced than those in the blood prison. After these blood demons were crushed on the spot, almost all of them could be digested. There was no other consumption at all. These blood demons were born with blood essence. They were born with incomparably pure energy. In addition, they also absorbed the purest blood-colored energy for their cultivation. There was not much impurities at all. After these tens of thousands of blood demons were devoured by him and directly dissolved by the art of conversion technique, he could feel that his cultivation had risen by a level almost instantly. This was much faster than the speed at which he absorbed all the spiritual energy in the sky and transformed it into cultivation. He had just entered the 7th level of Paong realm. It was equivalent to a pool that had just been expanded. However, there was not that much water. No matter how many came, he would not reject them. The more that came, the faster his cultivation improved. He was simply laughing maniacally. In this place, he was like a fish in water. For others, even if they could really absorb it, they would not be able to absorb it so crazily. He had the art of conversion technique as a foundation, so he could swallow as much as he wanted. As long as his body could withstand it, it did not matter. However, his physical body was the gilded tyrant form, which was incomparably tyrannical. There was no need to worry about this problem at all. As long as he continued to devour the blood-colored energy, it would only be a matter of time before he reached the peak of the 7th level of Paong realm. As long as he reached the peak of the 7th level of Paong realm, he would be able to contend with Yao Shengqing and the others. However, he was not anxious. 5 years was a long time. He still had to condense his Blade Dao incarnation. When that time came, he would be invincible and crush them in minutes. His eyes were incomparably deep. Just you wait. The next time he appeared, he would shock the world. Regardless of whether it was Yao Shengqing, Jing Tianlei, or the Divine Union leader and the others, he had to get rid of all of them. Considering his current speed, if he wanted to congeal more bloodstones, he would have to spend all day to congeal them, and he would only be able to congeal about 100. However, he had the Blood Realm Heart, which was born from the will of the entire Blood Realm. Although the Blood Realm Core couldn't control the entire world in the Blood Prison like it could in the Blood Realm, there were many more wonderful uses for it. Other things aside, he only needed to give it a try to discover that he could automatically condense bloodstones at any time by using the Blood Realm Core. He could condense 1,000 bloodstones in a day. That was 10 times his own efficiency. Based on this efficiency, it would only be a matter of time before he accumulated enough wealth to rival a nation. What was even more amazing was that he discovered that the Blood Realm Core could actually transform the blood essence of those blood demons into bloodstones. Compared to this discovery, the 10 times increase in refining efficiency was nothing. Wouldn't he be able to condense as many bloodstones as he wanted? It could simply be said that he was rich enough to rival a nation. Although he still needed these bloodstones to speed up his cultivation, he would one day be full. When that time came, these bloodstones would be wasted if he didn't use them. Now that he had the Blood Realm core, he could transform them all into bloodstones. Just like in the Blood Realm, bloodstones were a hard currency in the Blood Prison. Even if they were sold, they would still be priceless. This was because they could be swallowed directly to increase one's cultivation. Hence, there was no need to worry about selling them. Although they definitely couldn't be as precious as the God Source, they were still far more valuable than the mysterious core. Yi Shiwen started killing once again. This time, all the blood demons in the vicinity were out of luck. They were all crushed by Yi Shiwen. After some experiments, he discovered that the blood demons could condense into different bloodstones depending on their level. Ordinary blood demons below the myth realm could only condense into one bloodstone even if there were 100 of them. Blood demons above the myth realm could condense into one bloodstone. The higher the level, the more bloodstones could be condensed. He went on a killing spree and killed all the blood demons within a radius of 100 miles. As a result, he had more than 1,000 bloodstones in his possession. It was equivalent to the 9th level of Paong realm that could condense a bloodstone without eating or drinking for 10 days. However, Paong realm experts did not have the time to condense bloodstones every day. Therefore, although they could condense bloodstones out of thin air, it should not be a big source. From what he learned from Elder Kong before he came in, most of the bloodstones in the blood prison came from the bloodstone mine. However, those bloodstone mines were scattered everywhere in the blood prison. They had long been divided by the major forces in the blood prison. It was impossible for ordinary people to obtain them. Yi Shiwen was the only one who refined the bloodstone with the heart of the blood realm. In addition, Yi Shiwen also discovered that holding the heart of the blood realm was almost like holding the heaven Tao of the blood prison. He could easily enter the realm of the unity of heaven and man. His cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. If he wanted to hide, no one could find him. With this ability, he did not care about Yao Xingqing and the others' pursuit. If they had the ability, they would find him first. Using the ability of the heart of the blood realm, Yi Shiwen easily disguised himself as a middle-aged man. His restraining breath technique was practiced to the point of perfection. Coupled with the concealment of the heart of the blood realm, he looked no different from ordinary people. Even if Yao Xingqing personally walked in front of him, it would be impossible for him to recognize him. In the blood prison, it was simply successful in every endeavor. With this heart of the blood realm, he could avoid a lot of trouble in the next 5 years. He could even avoid a lot of trouble in the future. In the depths of the blood prison, there were powerful demons who had already proved their Tao. He had decided to disguise himself as another person. However, to disguise himself, he must not reveal any flaws. His martial arts must also be brand new. However, what martial arts did he not reveal now? But these were not a problem. With his current martial arts attainments, he could create a strong martial art in minutes. It was enough to deceive people on normal days. While he was still thinking, he had arrived at the first stronghold in the blood prison. It was a small fortress. The entire fortress was surrounded by countless arrays, revealing a dangerous atmosphere. There were many such small fortresses in the blood prison. They were built by many people who wandered in the blood prison. In the blood prison, there were many experts in the third and second areas. There were also many experts who had reached the age and could not stay in the third area. They paid a huge price to stay. Chapter 2169. The price they had to pay was to hand over a certain number of bloodstones to the deification abyss every once in a while. The higher the strength, the more bloodstones needed to be handed over. Otherwise, they would not be allowed to stay at all. It was unimaginable how many bloodstones the deification abyss could collect over time. No wonder they could gather all kinds of geniuses from all over the world and train them. Such financial and material resources were simply unimaginable to Yi Shiwen in the past. He guessed that there was probably more than one Tao confirming expert in the deification abyss, and they were all expert. Otherwise, how could such a huge amount of wealth not attract the greed of countless people? But at present these had nothing to do with him. Anyway, as long as he was still within 100 years, he did not have to worry about being kicked out, and he did not need to hand over bloodstones. Because of this, in the blood prison, all kinds of competitions were extremely cruel. Everyone wanted to continue to stay here to cultivate. Staying here to cultivate, the possibility of eventually being able to prove one's Tao was much higher than staying outside. Leaving here, the possibility of proving one's Tao outside could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Even in the Xian world, there were only a few who had been proven to have proven their Tao in the past tens of thousands of years. In many worlds, no one had proven their Tao for tens of thousands of years. One could imagine the gap between them. But he was not worried. With his current trial, ordinary experts who had just entered the 9th level of Paong realm were not his opponent. Even if he encountered Yao Xingqing and the others, he would be able to protect himself. There was nothing to worry about, unless he went too deep into the blood prison and encountered a powerful expert of the Tao confirming level. As he thought about it, he had already arrived at the entrance of the fortress. Suddenly, the formation at the entrance of the fortress was activated, illuminating him from top to bottom. Yi Shiwen knew that this was to prevent Blood Demon from impersonating a human to enter. At this level of cultivation, it was a simple thing to change one's appearance, but the essence of the Blood Demon would not change. But Yi Shiwen was not a Blood Demon, so naturally, he did not have to worry. He easily passed the test of the formation at the entrance and went straight inside. However, he was stopped before he could go too deep. An expert cupped his fists and said, "Sir, if you want to stay in our sky-bearing castle, you have to pay 2 bloodstones a day." Yi Shiwen was secretly speechless. Ordinary people could only condense 10 bloodstones in a day, but to live in this place required 2 bloodstones. It was indeed expensive, but it was nothing for him. Now, he had more than 1,000 bloodstones on him, so these 2 bloodstones were just a trivial matter. Without hesitation, he handed over 2 pieces. That man let Yi Shiwen pass, and then said, "When the time comes, you can come to pay every day, or you can pay a certain amount in one go." Yi Shiwen thought for a moment and handed over 10 bloodstones, and told him not to bother him for a few days. This was the norm in the blood prison. One should know that the most terrifying thing in the blood prison was the endless number of blood demons. No one knew how many blood demons there were in the entire blood prison. No one knew how many blood demons there were. No matter how many blood demons were killed, it was impossible to kill them all. They were born with the blood essence of the entire world. Unless the blood essence that filled the sky was consumed, there would be no day that they would dissipate. There were many blood demons, and there were many powerful mythical-level blood demons among them. There were even blood demons that had achieved Tao. Each of these blood demons was extremely powerful. They often appeared everywhere, and these foreign experts did not even have a foothold in the blood prison. They did not even have a place to cultivate in peace. Therefore, under such circumstances, such fortresses appeared. These fortresses provided shelter for these foreign experts, and there were also many powerful formations inside. Ordinary blood demons could not break through such fortresses. However, to provide shelter for them, they naturally had to pay the price, which was to hand over enough bloodstones. Behind each fortress was a powerful expert. In fact, in the deeper parts of the blood world, there were not only fortresses, but also powerful cities. The city lords were also extremely powerful experts. In order to obtain a foothold, Even these foreign experts were willing to spend 2 bloodstones in exchange for a period of peace. Seeing that Yi Shiwen could casually throw out 10 bloodstones, the way that the person looked at Yi Shiwen changed immediately. Even if the person in front of him was not a local tyrant, he was at least well off. It was much better than those poor people. Although those low-level mythical level experts also had a lot of wealth, no one in the blood prison wanted that wealth in the outside world. They could only exchange it for bloodstones to circulate freely. In this place, bloodstones were everything. This was because bloodstones could accelerate cultivation and deepen cultivation. What kind of treasure could be compared to bloodstones? He walked all the way in. Although it was a fortress, it was equivalent to a small town. At a glance, although there were not many people, there were still thousands of people. In the center of the fortress there was a very large market. In the market, hundreds of people set up stalls. The stalls had all kinds of treasures, martial arts secret manuals, and everything else. Apart from the small number of people, there was no difference from the outside world's market. Yi Shiwen's heart moved. If he wanted to disguise himself as someone else, a complete set of martial arts was indispensable. However, it was more convenient for him to buy a set of martial arts here, instead of deducing a set of martial arts out of thin air. Thinking of this, he immediately walked in. There were no shouts. Even the stall owners were making full use of every minute and second to cultivate. All the items were placed in front of them, or they had already made a list. Only when the customers were interested would they be awakened to carry out the transaction. Yi Shiwen's eyes were like lightning. He directly glanced all the way and quickly filtered more than a dozen stalls. He only wanted martial arts. As for other things, he didn't care. Right now, most of what he had learned was focused on fist techniques and sword technique. Other than that, he had the deepest understanding of the way of the blade and the way of the palm. In particular, the way of the palm could be said to have been born by stepping on Yao Xingyan's corpse. He had devoured his martial arts incarnation on the spot, and his understanding of the way of the palm had skyrocketed. If he wanted to speed up in a short period of time, these aspects were naturally the most suitable. His gaze swept over, and soon, a set of claw techniques appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. This set of claw techniques was called Holy Claw of Judgment. This set of claw techniques was actually a set of deity-level claw techniques, according to the indication. Once this kind of martial arts was spread out, it would definitely cause countless people to fight for it. It might even cause countless worlds to be littered with corpses. But now, it was thrown aside like a roadside vegetable. Holy Claw of Judgment was only priced at 1,000 bloodstones, which made him a little stunned. In fact, it was not surprising that a deity-level martial arts was priced at 1,000,000. Even if it was incomplete, it could be priced at tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. Before he came in, he also had some understanding of the prices in the entire blood prison. Although deity-level martial arts couldn't be regarded as priceless here like in the outside world, it could also be said to be rare. But after a brief look, he knew the reason. This Holy Claw of Judgment was already incomplete. There were only 2 moves in total, and even these 2 moves were actually incomplete. There was no complete version. It could be said to be incomplete among the incomplete. No wonder no one was interested in it. Wasn't this a scam? It was already incomplete to begin with. Even these 2 incomplete moves were actually still incomplete. This was simply a scam among scams. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care at all. With the mysterious space, the incomplete martial arts could also be completely deduced. What was there to be afraid of? If it was the complete claw technique, even with Yi Shiwen's current efficiency, he wouldn't dare to say that he could buy it. Moreover, it would probably have been taken away by others. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen quickly said, "Stall owner, I want your Holy Claw of Judgment!" The stall owner opened his eyes and looked at Yi Shiwen with some surprise in his eyes. He didn't expect Yi Shiwen to actually want to buy this set of claw techniques that no one had been interested in since it was put up for sale. It was simply a miracle. This set of claw techniques was also obtained in a relic, but it was incomplete. He couldn't even cultivate the only two move. For him, it was simply an accumulation. It was tasteless, but it was a pity to throw it away. If he kept it, there was no way to cultivate it. But if he threw it away, he was reluctant. After all, it was still a god-level technique. It would be a pity to throw it away. It was just that after he put it up for sale, no one was interested at all. 1,000 bloodstones was not a small amount. It was possible to buy a useless claw technique unless it was a god-level nouveau riche who had already regarded money as dirt. If Yi Shiwen didn't have a way to restore these two moves, he wouldn't be so bored to sell these two completely useless claw techniques. You have to think about it carefully. These two martial arts themselves are incomplete, so if you buy it, you can't come back to me. I don't return the things I sell. He was a little surprised, but he was also afraid that Yi Shiwen would come back to settle the accounts. Don't worry, I won't come back to trouble you, unless these two martial arts are fake, said Yi Shiwen. Don't worry, it's not fake, said the man quickly when he saw the situation. He was in a good mood. After hanging here for so many years, someone finally bought it. Thousands of bloodstones, it was also not a small amount of money. After the transaction, Yi Shiwen got this holy claw of judgment. He simply didn't even bother to bargain. For others, if they wanted to get bloodstones, they had to go through various means, but he only needed to kill. As long as there was enough time, he could get as many as he wanted. There was no need to worry at all. He immediately flipped through the holy claw of judgment. Chapter 2170. This Judgment Holy Claw had a total of 2 moves, namely the Freedom Claw and the Soul-Crushing Blood Claw. Among them, the Freedom Claw was an area of effect attack. Once the claw was unleashed, the entire world would completely change its color and collapse endlessly. The Soul-Crushing Blood Claw was a single-target attack. It was very tyrannical. Once it was used, the sky would fall and the earth would crack. When cultivated to the peak, a world could be easily torn into 2 halves. However, they were all incomplete. Not to mention the other moves of the Judgment Holy Claw, just the Freedom Claw and the Soul-Crushing Blood Claw had a lot of damage. Among them, the Freedom Claw was the most exaggerated. The loss rate was as high as 50%. The Soul-Crushing Blood Claw also had a loss rate of 30%. No wonder the middle-aged man's expression was as if he had picked up a big bargain. If it was someone else, they would probably be dumbfounded. They couldn't even make up for it. They were just demigods. Wasn't it nonsense to want to repair the god-level martial arts? It was already very difficult for them to comprehend the god-level martial art. Was there any hope for a higher-level martial arts? However, for Yi Shiwen, this was not a problem at all. With the mysterious space, it was nothing more than spending a large price to complete the martial arts. Then, he glanced at the entire market. Although there were other martial arts, they were all mythical-level martial arts. These might be considered rare for others, but for him, it was nothing at all. There was not much meaning in learning it. He put away the Judgment Holy Claw. This was not a place for cultivation. He walked towards the residential area on the other side of the fortress. There were many courtyards for rent. However, the rental fee was also 1 bloodstone per day. It was very expensive. Fortunately, the environment was good. He didn't have to worry about being disturbed by others. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate anymore. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth pulled up into a smile. He sneered, "There are actually some flies." He found that there were several people following behind him. It seemed that his generosity had made many people regard him as a fat sheep. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. In the outside world, these people were all grandmasters and world overlord. They might not necessarily do such things. However, in the blood prison, there were no grandmasters or overlords. They were just existences struggling at the bottom. Temperament also had to be tempered from the beginning, so it was nothing at all. This was the difference in status. Just like Yi Shiwen, if he was in the ancient barons or in the true martial domain, he would be the supreme overlord, and no one could disobey him. However, in the divine transformation abyss, he was still far from reaching the overlord level of strength. Naturally, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. However, even though his cultivation was not at the peak, it was still wishful thinking for some small fries to take advantage of him. However, these people didn't dare to act presumptuously within the fortress. After all, this was the place where everyone was staying. If they really made a move here, it would be equivalent to becoming everyone's enemy. No one wanted anything to happen to this last safe place. Therefore, he didn't mind letting them wait. After paying enough bloodstones for a month's residence, he immediately entered the small courtyard and started closed-door training. The bloodstones on his body were almost consumed, so if he wanted to deduce the 2 moves of Judgment Holy Claw, he definitely couldn't use bloodstones, so he could only use Divine Source. Including the ones he received and the ones he exchanged later, Yi Shiwen now had a total of 25 Divine Source in his hands, which was definitely more than enough for general cultivation. He immediately started to go into closed-door training and deduced the 2 moves of Judgment Holy Claw. In a space of nothingness, Yi Shiwen sat in a piece of nothingness, and in front of him, a looming figure stood in the void, grabbing out directly with a claw. In the void, 5 huge blood shadows were grabbed, and the sky was also torn into 5 huge pieces. He was deducing the claw technique of soul-crushing blood claw. This soul-crushing blood claw was worthy of being a god-level technique. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't see through it at a glance, although he really didn't have much attainment in claw techniques. At the same time, a lot of knowledge about claw techniques was also deduced by him, and his cultivation in claw techniques was also rapidly improving. Originally, his understanding of claw techniques was still in a state of half-understanding, because he didn't study too much in this aspect. However, with his current realm, these martial arts were nothing more than comprehending by analogy. His cultivation speed was very fast. In addition, he was also willing to invest in this aspect. Piece by piece, he used up the divine source without hesitation. With the continuous burning of these divine sources, energy poured into the mysterious space, and his understanding of claw techniques was in a state of rapid progress. It took him a full month to complete the repair of the 2 moves of Judgment Holy Claw. During this process, he consumed a total of 2 divine sources, and only then did he barely complete the repair of Judgment Holy Claw. However, when he completed the repair of Judgment Holy Claw, his understanding of claw techniques also began to enter a whole new realm. Although there were only 2 moves, it was enough. The power was very great and the changes were endless. Just like Yi Shiwen, although he currently only knew the human Tao Fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, he was still extremely powerful when he exerted the power of human Tao Fist to the extreme. However, if he wanted to master Judgment Holy Claw, the current him was far from enough. Without any hesitation, he directly immersed himself in cultivation again. At this time, outside his courtyard, a group of people were looking inside, and their faces showed a bit of impatience. Why isn't he coming out yet? Is he going to cultivate until he dies? Someone said impatiently. I don't know, but since he has no plans to come out in the short term, we can't continue to delay like this. You guys take turns to monitor him for a period of time. Once there is news of him, report immediately. However, this can also verify one thing, which is that he doesn't have the lack bloodstone at all. If we can snatch it, we can also become rich overnight. Among these people, an old man with a sinister face said. He was the leader of these people, and his cultivation was also very high. Yi Shiwen didn't know that the people waiting for him outside were already very impatient. At this time, he had already entered the most critical period of his cultivation. He had already cultivated the Judgment Holy Claw to a critical point. He could only withdraw his vigilance and devote himself wholeheartedly to it. Just like this, another 3 months passed. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen, who had been sitting cross-legged, finally opened his eyes all of a sudden. A fierce astral wind swept out directly around his body. It formed a huge astral wind. Soul-crushing blood claw. He stretched out his hand and clawed suddenly. The space within 3 meters around him collapsed, but there was not a trace of leakage. It was conceivable that he had cultivated these powers to the extreme. I finally mastered Judgment Holy Claw, said Yi Shiwen. His hand was faintly shining. This was the proof that his hand technique had been cultivated to the extreme. He didn't hide it. It just so happened that there must be 1 or 2 obvious signs when walking in the blood prison with this identity. This Judgment Holy Claw was not bad. In the future, he would show off his claw technique in front of others. He smiled slightly. Finally, the claw technique was accomplished. He had a new direction of breakthrough in martial arts. It was just that he only had 20 pieces of divine source left. It consumed a total of 5 pieces of divine source. But in general, the effect was still good. Although it couldn't be compared with the peak, it was more than enough as a choice to conceal his identity. Yi Shiwen's divine senses swept out, but he found that those people from half a year ago were still there. They were completely haunting him. It just so happens that I'm going out too. I'll accumulate more blood stones and get rid of these pestering flies in one go. He had made up his mind, so he didn't hesitate anymore. He directly strode out of the small courtyard. He didn't teleport away immediately. On the contrary, he walked out slowly and paid the rent that he owed during this period of time. After confirming that the stalker had noticed him, he directly went out of the fortress. It didn't take long for him to feel that a group of people was already following behind him. He pretended not to notice and went all the way to the depths of the blood world. He didn't rush to force them out. Instead, he first tested the power of Judgment Holy Claw. Judgment Holy Claw. His claw directly collapsed the void. He directly grabbed out many hidden blood demons. They turned into a mass of blood energy on the spot and were devoured by him. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. He was very satisfied with the power of Judgment Holy Claw. After he led these people out of the fortress, he suddenly stopped. Just as those people behind him were about to make a move, he finally spoke and said, "Still not coming out? You've been following me for so long. Why don't you come out and meet me?" As soon as his voice fell, 7 or 8 figures appeared behind him. They quickly occupied a favorable position and surrounded him. They were led by an old man in a silver robe with a sinister face. "I didn't expect to be discovered by you. Since you've discovered it, then obediently hand over all your wealth. Although I don't know why you have so much wealth, you'd better obediently do as we say. Otherwise, you'll die very miserably. As long as you obediently cooperate, I'll give you a quick death," said the old man coldly. I'm going to die anyway. Why should I cooperate with you?" said Yi Shiwen faintly, but he didn't panic at all. "If you don't cooperate, I have 1,000 ways to torture you. I guarantee that you'll regret your choice," said the sinister old man coldly. Yi Shiwen chuckled. "Have you blockheads never thought about how I got all the bloodstones on me?" Chapter 2171. Everyone was stunned for a moment. They really did not think about this. However, thinking about it, it was most likely exchanged with other wealth. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen was just a Paong Realm 7th level. With such strength, he could be destroyed in the blood prison even if he went a little further. It was nothing at all. "What do you mean?" The old man with a gloomy face couldn't help but say coldly. I mean, you are idiots. Yi Shiwen stepped out and swept out directly on the spot. His whole body was like a whirlwind, directly rushing in front of the old man with a gloomy face. Aren't you coveting my 1,000 bloodstones? I will now let you see what my 1,000 bloodstones have been exchanged for. Soul Crusher Blood Claw. He directly opened his 5 fingers and condensed them into a claw. He grabbed out and clawed out 5 astonishing blood marks. The entire world was divided into 5 parts by these 5 blood marks. It was like a landscape painting that was torn into pieces. The extremely terrifying claw power overpowered the body of the gloomy old man. Puff! His entire body was like the void, directly torn apart. Ah! The gloomy old man let out a blood-curdling screech as his entire body was torn apart. However, under the drive of a strange force, his body condensed again. However, his face was also pale. Obviously, his vitality was also greatly injured. He was completely injured by Yi Shiwen. How is it possible? The old man looked at Yi Shiwen in disbelief. As an existence at the peak of Paong Realm 8th level, Yi Shiwen was only at Paong Realm 7th level. He was almost unable to fight back. One claw almost killed him. It was almost in one breath that he had no strength to fight back. He finally understood why Yi Shiwen was so fearless. Yi Shiwen actually had such confidence. Naturally, he was fearless. With such combat power, perhaps even a master at Paong Realm 9th level would be killed by one claw. How can he be so strong? Could it be? 1,000 and 10,000 possibilities flashed in his mind. You do have some ability. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant in front of me. However, if you want to contend against me with this, you are still far from it. Yi Shiwen sneered and once again clawed out. All the defenses of the old man in front of him collapsed on the spot. The old man was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all, and was crushed on the spot. This time, the old man could no longer condense it. He had already suffered a great deal of damage to his vitality, and now, he was clawed to death. You actually dared to attack us. We are the subordinates of the 9th Elder of the Sky-bearing Fortress. You're finished. The remaining people couldn't help but speak in fear. It wasn't that they hadn't seen people being killed before, but it was the first time they had been forced into such a desperate situation. But he had never encountered such a thing before. So, it's an internal parasite. You're breaking the law despite knowing it. However, so what if your 9th Elder personally takes action? Do you really think I'm a pushover? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sneer, but it's useless. Anyway, you can't wait until that time. He clawed out Claw of Freedom. Suddenly, the sky was full of claw shadows. The shadows were intertwined, and the sky collapsed, directly shrouding these people. These people were even worse. Most of them were only at the 3rd or 4th level of Paong Realm. They were not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all, and were directly clawed to death. After the death of these people, their wealth also belonged to Yi Shiwen. However, they didn't have many bloodstones on them. In fact, the total number of bloodstones on their bodies was only around 2,000. So, he somewhat understood why they were so excited when they saw 1,000 bloodstones. Especially the old man with a gloomy face. He only had more than 1,000 bloodstones on him. This was the gap. After obtaining bloodstones, it was impossible not to use them. Whether it was as a hard currency or for cultivation, they had to be used. So, not many of them were left. Yi Shiwen could condense thousands of bloodstones at any time. For others, it was no different than a legend. He was also quite satisfied with the power of the Holy Claw of Judgment. When fully exerted, it could fully display his current strength. It could be said to be the extreme. In this case, there was no problem at all for him to walk in the blood prison with a new identity. No one would doubt that the person with this outstanding claw technique would actually be Yi Shiwen. He still had to endure it now, but it didn't mean that he would continue to endure it. 5 years, at most 5 years, he must make Yao Xingqing and others pay the price. Yi Shiwen directly crushed these 2,000 blood stones, which turned into a mighty river of qi and blood, which he swallowed on the spot. He could feel that the power of his whole body had skyrocketed, and he was one step closer to the peak of the 7th level of Paoang realm. He didn't immediately return to the sky-bearing castle, but launched a massacre nearby. His holy claw of judgment still needed more training, and he also wanted to deduce the remaining parts of the holy claw of judgment. Whoosh! He directly grabbed the sky full of claw shadows, and countless void collapsed in an instant. The rules were manifested in it. Although it was not as obvious here as in the deification abyss, it was far beyond other places. In addition to the special environment in the blood prison, it made the cultivation speed here a notch higher. But naturally, the danger here was also self-evident. In just a short span of 10 days, he had encountered 3 formidable blood demons of the 9th heavenly layer of Paoang realm. He had killed 2 of them, but the last one had been able to contend with him, and they had ended up in a tie. This was only the periphery of the blood prison. If he continued to go deeper, he might encounter even more terrifying blood demons of the peak of the myth realm. He had no doubt that with his current situation, even if he entered, he would only be able to escape. Among the thousands of people in the 3rd district of the deification abyss, only about 10 or 20 people could wander in it. With his strength, it was naturally not enough. He killed for a full 3 months in the vicinity before he stopped. At this time, the blood stones he had gathered, besides those that were devoured by him, had reached tens of thousands. With so many blood stones, he planned to go all out and directly rush to the peak of Paoang realm's 7th level. At that time, even if Yao Xingqing came in person, he would dare to compete with him. He immediately returned to the sky-bearing fortress without hesitation. This was the only stronghold in the vicinity. However, as soon as he returned to the sky-bearing fortress, he suddenly shouted and exploded in the air, "How dare you! How dare you kill my people!" Accompanied by this loud shout, a figure descended from the sky. Obviously, it had been waiting for him for a long time. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw that it was a devil race. Moreover, it was a great devil race. It directly flapped its wings and stared at Yi Shiwen coldly. Then, an overwhelming and powerful devil energy directly shrouded Yi Shiwen. This was the 9th elder of the sky-bearing fortress. The sky-bearing fortress had been built for a very long time, and no one had been able to verify it. The ones who ruled the entire sky-bearing fortress now were the 9 supreme masters of the 9th heaven of the Paoang realm. They formed the highest level of existence in the sky-bearing fortress. In this blood prison, Paoang realm 8th level did not have much status, let alone a mere Paoang realm 7th level. No one paid attention to him at all. Only Paoang realm 9th level had some status and could serve as the fort lord. Obviously, those flies that Yi Shiwen had killed a few months ago had already been discovered by this devil race. "Even if I killed them, so what?" Yi Shiwen said lightly. "How dare you? I haven't seen such a bold human in a long time." The great demon sneered. The human race and the demon race were born to be mortal enemies. Even if it was not in the ancient times, there would not be much change. You are the castle lord, yet you allow your subordinates to rob us of our wealth. Who would dare to live in your towering sky castle in the future? Are you going to kill anyone who has a little bit of wealth? Yi Shiwen shouted. What? How could such a thing happen? Those people are actually the 9th elder's subordinate. No wonder the sky-bearing fortress did not do anything when someone was killed. If this is true, I dare not continue to live here. Isn't this killing people? Yes, I dare not live here either. Only a madman would want to live here. Suddenly, countless people in the sky-bearing fortress were shocked. If this was true, how could they continue to live here? They would be killed as long as they had a little bit of wealth. It would be better to go out and fight against the blood demons. Nonsense. Even this fearless demon would not dare to casually agree to such an important matter. This was because this sky-propping castle did not belong to him alone. It also involved the other 8 castle lords, and he was only the lowest-ranking elder among them. If he agreed to this matter and caused everyone to leave, it would be cutting off everyone's source of wealth. Cutting off one's source of wealth was like killing one's parent. He was also very clear about this truth. At that time, he would really become a thorn in the side of the other elders. I'm talking nonsense? You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not. Those guys are bold. They would not dare to do such a thing if they did not have someone to back them up. Yi Shiwen sneered. You have to show evidence if you want to slander me. This great demon was completely driven mad by Yi Shiwen. His original plan to get rid of Yi Shiwen in a thunderous manner suddenly vanished. Evidence? Ha ha ha, you are actually talking to me about evidence? That's so funny. Yi Shiwen's eyes were filled with killing intent. Do I need to talk to you about evidence? If I say you are, then you are. Moreover, do you think I intend to talk to you about principles? Everyone who provokes me must die. As he spoke, Yi Shiwen's figure directly jumped out. Chapter 2172. Boom! Yi Shiwen took a step forward, like a cannonball directly blasting into the ocean, setting off boundless airwaves, causing an uproar. Everyone only saw a flash in front of them. Unknowingly, Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of the great demon at the 9th level of the Paong realm. Although he did not spread his demon wings, he had already cultivated to the level of storm wings. Even without spreading his demon wings, his speed was still extremely fast. This was his current strength. Even without using any means, he had already steadily raised his combat strength to the level of the 9th level of the Paong realm. So fast. When did it happen? I didn't even see it. Can the 7th level of the Paong realm be so strong? In the sky-bearing fortress, many people who were paying attention to this side were instantly shocked because Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. It was simply too fast. Boom. After all, the great demon was a top existence at the 9th level of the Paong realm. Compared to the subordinate at the 8th level of the Paong realm, it was not known how many times more tyrannical it was. Almost at the moment when it was only a hair's breadth away, its hands directly spread out an incomparably huge light wall. In just 1,000th of a second, Yi Shiwen's fist slammed into the light wall, and then with a boom, the light wall directly shattered, unable to withstand Yi Shiwen's incomparably terrifying strength. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist directly hit the body of the great demon. The great demon did not have much time to react and was directly blasted out, flying out of the sky-bearing fortress for thousands of miles on the spot. A huge crack appeared on its head, almost like a blow had caused it to be seriously injured. The scene was completely silent. Even some masters who were planning to attack seemed to be completely frightened when they saw this scene, and did not dare to attack at will. Roar. The great demon's loud roar came from afar, the sound spreading for thousands of miles. Boom. A monstrous wave of air swept directly from afar, wrapped in a shocking demonic shadow, descended from the sky, and on the spot it clawed towards Yi Shiwen. Boom. The void behind Yi Shiwen collapsed with a loud bang when this incomparably huge claw arrived in front of him. Because the speed of the claw was faster than the speed of the void's collapse, it led to the strange scene of the devil's claw attacking him, but the void had just collapsed. Yi Shiwen didn't panic in the face of this devil's claw. He directly attacked at the critical moment. Soul-breaking blood claw. 5 huge blood-colored cracks appeared in the void, rapidly expanding, directly turning into 5 incomparably huge rivers of blood that flowed through the sky. Wherever they passed, everything would collapse, unable to stop them at all. Boom. the demonic claw was instantly swallowed up by the 5 huge cracks. Then, behind the demonic claw, an incomparably loud scream rang out, and the entire person was forcibly grabbed and sent flying. The great devil was blasted away, and along the way, a huge crack was left in the void. It could be seen how much power he had encountered. Almost the entire void collapsed, and his entire body was on the verge of shattering. And at the same time, Yi Shiwen took a step forward, 1,000 miles in the blink of an eye, and directly arrived in front of the great devil. The great fiend lord was terrified. "Great devil domain!" he roared loudly, and suddenly his whole body directly turned into a devil's kingdom, endless devil's law extended, and completely evolved into a terrifying devil's land. The surrounding laws were completely covered up and devoured by him. The domain extended by a master of Paong 9th level could almost instantly form a small world. In this small world, he was the only true god, he was the only master. Soul-breaking blood claw. In the eyes of the greater demon, the 5 blood-colored cracks grew larger and larger, and in an instant, they directly blasted his body. Pucci! His iron-like body, which he had always been proud of, had been easily crushed by Yi Shiwen in an instant. His devil's law was also broken in an instant, and in an instant, he was crushed by Yi Shiwen. He was completely no match for Yi Shiwen. Ah! The great devil screamed, and was directly crushed to death, without any strength to fight back. And the people in the sky-bearing fortress were still stunned, watching helplessly as Yi Shiwen directly crushed the great devil to death, and there was no other way, or in other words, they did not want to be enemies with Yi Shiwen, who was now as terrifying as a devil. And at this moment, in the void, a few shadows appeared. Each of the shadows had an unimaginably powerful aura, and without exception, all of them were existences of Paong 9th level. The other 8 great elders of the sky-bearing fortress had all appeared here. And under the gaze of the 8 great experts of Paong 9th level, Yi Shiwen did not feel uncomfortable at all, and said, "Why, do you also want to stand up for him? Death cannot wipe out his crimes. He actually dared to do such a thing in private. This is equivalent to cutting off our source of wealth. No matter how he dies, it will not be considered too much." Someone spoke up, and it seemed that they did not want to fall out with Yi Shiwen. They were still very afraid of Yi Shiwen, who could easily crush an existence of Paong 9th level, and if possible, they also did not want to fall out with Yi Shiwen. Moreover, as Yi Shiwen had said before, they were the supreme rulers of the sky-bearing castle. The sky-bearing castle had been delivering benefits to them at all times. This great demon's actions were tantamount to cutting off their source of wealth. Cutting off one's source of wealth was like killing one's parents. This principle was applicable everywhere, not to mention that they were obviously just a group of interests. They would not do anything for this great devil. Yi Shiwen had long understood this point, so he was not in a hurry. If these people's relationship was really that good, they would not have stood aside and watched for so long. Although he had acted very quickly, these experts would still have a chance to intervene at any time. They also could not fall out with him for a dead person. "Now that I have killed him, I request to join the elders of the sky-bearing fortress. I want the same treatment he received. I believe you will not refuse a master," Yi Shiwen said lightly. These masters were silent for a while. Although one more person meant one more person to share a share in the blood prison, it was not so simple. One more person meant one more strength. In a place like the blood prison, where it could be destroyed at any time, even if the fortress was built, it was still useless. It could still be destroyed under the attack of a large wave of blood demons. One more person meant one more strength. It was just that it was not easy to find a master of Paong 9th level. They only had these few in these years. Now that one person could join, they naturally could not ask for more. So soon, they also expressed their opinions. "I have no objections. Yes, anything is fine, But you have to shoulder the responsibility he has to shoulder. Yi Shiwen smiled. Yao Xingqing and Jing Tianlei probably hadn't even dreamt of this. They had thought that he would be hiding everywhere like a mouse. However, he had now become an elder of a fort. He had become the highest level of this fort. There was no need to hide at all. In that case, let me introduce myself first. You can call me young Master Duoming in the future, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. Everyone had no objections, although they also knew that this was definitely a code name. It could not be Yi Shiwen's real identity, but who cared about this? They needed to borrow Yi Shiwen's strength, and there was only one purpose, which was to prove their Tao. Other things did not matter at all. In that case, you are the ninth elder. You can also inherit the original ninth elder's matter. I will give the order. No one will make things difficult for you. After speaking, those figures in the void also slowly disappeared from everyone's eyes. Yi Shiwen held a folding fan in his hand, slightly opened it, gently waved it, and then swaggered into the sky fortress. Everyone had a shocked look on their faces. They hadn't expected that things would turn out like this. Yi Shiwen had killed the original ninth elder, but had replaced him instead. However, everyone thought that this was normal. The weak were prey to the strong. Although they were all legendary masters who could summon the wind and summon the rain outside, they were still far from being able to do so here. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's battle only affected the two of them. It did not affect them. So soon, this matter was forgotten by them, and they began to enter the state of cultivation. If there were no special circumstances, this sky fortress was no different from the other fortresses, a group of crazy cultivators cultivating. Yi Shiwen entered the sky fortress, and then directly went to the original Great Demon's mansion, which was also the innermost place in the entire sky fortress, considered the best place. But the Great Demon had transformed it into a demonic land, which Yi Shiwen did not like, and directly set up a formation, changing this place into a holy land, with a small bridge over a flowing river, a scene of immortals. As for the servants that were originally captured by the Great Devil, he didn't drive away any of them. Instead, he kept all of them. Anyway, these were insignificant servants. For him, it didn't matter at all. After settling the original ninth elder's people, Yi Shiwen immediately entered the state of closed-door cultivation. This time, he wanted to rush to the peak of Paong Realm in one go. At that time, unless he encountered a Tao confirmation master, otherwise, he really would not be afraid of anyone. Everything was only one step away. Chapter 2173. After settling down the ninth elder's people, Yi Shiwen began to enter the state of closed-door training. After entering the mansion, he discovered that the ninth elder had a lot of wealth. He actually had tens of thousands of bloodstones. Compared to his subordinates, the ninth elder was many times richer. Of course, it was still incomparable to Yi Shiwen's. The ninth elder's wealth was not much different from Yi Shiwen's harvest in a few months. With these 20,000 bloodstones as a foundation, Yi Shiwen was much more confident in breaking through to the peak of the 7th level of Paong Realm. As long as he broke through to the peak of the 7th level of Paong Realm, he had nothing to worry about. After entering closed-door training, he directly grabbed the condensed blood chi of 1,000 bloodstones and swallowed them all on the spot. Boom! The boundless energy all rushed into his body and started to run around in his body. In his body it was constantly bursting. He operated the observing person scripture and the art conversion technique. These two techniques were constantly operating in his body, like a giant beast, constantly devouring the blood chi and turning it into his life essence. His body devoured the boundless energy hungrily. His whole body was like a huge blood pool, constantly absorbing the blood essence into it. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed in a hurry. 2 years' time was nothing compared to the long time in the blood prison. It was also nothing for the sky-bearing fortress. In the past 2 years, there were not many changes in the sky-bearing fortress. There were also no changes due to the addition of the ninth elder. There were a few blood demon waves, and countless blood demons attacked the defense of the sky-bearing fortress. However, they were not able to break through the defense of the sky-bearing fortress. A few elders came out of closed-door training and easily dealt with them. They could not really attack the defense of the sky-bearing fortress. Everything was calm as if it had been many years ago. It had always been like this since a long time ago. At this time, Yi Shiwen came out of closed-door training quietly. If there were people familiar with him, they would be able to see that Yi Shiwen had become more mellow, and his control of his aura was more stable. He had successfully broken through to the peak of the 7th level of the Paoang realm. It was just an advancement within the same realm, and not a new realm. Therefore, there was not much movement, and he did not show off his abilities, but only he knew that during the past 2 years, his strength had increased tremendously. There was no fundamental breakthrough, because if he took another step forward, he would already be at the Tao corroboration level. No matter what, it was impossible for him to cross over. Therefore, he did not attempt to cross over casually. What he lacked now was to condense the Saber Tao incarnation. As long as he could condense the Saber Tao incarnation, he would be the first person below Tao validation. At that time, what Yao Xingqing, what Jing Tianlei, what Abyssal Demon Lord. They wouldn't even be able to withstand a single blow. Unless they attained the Tao, it was impossible for them to be his match. However, in order to condense a Saber Tao incarnation, aside from having a certain level of comprehension of the Saber Tao, the most important thing was to have sufficient energy. Be it divine source or bloodstones, they all required a lot. However, he didn't expect that someone would come knocking on his door as soon as he came out of seclusion. It was none other than the second elder of the 9 great elders. He was a short and fat man who always had a smile on his face. He was dressed luxuriously like a businessman. However, it was precisely because of this that he was in charge of the various economic affairs in the sky-bearing castle. He had always been in charge of it very well. In the past 2 years, Yi Shiwen's share had not been reduced at all. "What's the matter? Is it rare for you to come?" Yi Shiwen looked at the second elder with a smile. The second elder looked at Yi Shiwen with some surprise. He could see that Yi Shiwen's strength had become much stronger in the past 2 years. It was indeed quite amazing to be able to make such progress in a mere 2 years. After all, at their level, it could be said that every step was extremely difficult. If it was in the outside world, it might take more than 1,000 years to take a single step. If it was a race with a short lifespan like the human race, it was possible that they would waste their entire lives and turn into dust. However, even in the deification abyss, it was still very amazing to be able to make such great progress in 2 years. Especially the second elder, he had not made any progress for decades. If he were to go one step further, he would be able to prove his Tao. In comparison, Yi Shiwen had more room for improvement. He was only at the 7th level of the Paoang realm, and he was already so amazing. If he continued to practice, it would be even worse. He knew that Yi Shiwen's origin must be quite extraordinary. Otherwise, how could it be possible for a 7th level of the Paoang realm to defeat a 9th level of the Paoang realm without the strength to fight back? However, he would not ask in detail. It was just that Yi Shiwen was strong enough. Thinking of this, he became even more enthusiastic. One doesn't come without a reason. Old Jiu, you have been here for 2 years. During these 2 years, we did not disturb you when you were in closed-door cultivation. However, you also know that after enjoying the benefits, we naturally have to fulfill our obligations. The second elder looked at Yi Shiwen and said with a smile, "What kind of tasks are there?" Yi Shiwen asked. Old Jiu, you should also know that for the past 2 years, we have been able to send you about 10,000 bloodstones every year, right? The second elder said. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded. It was all thanks to the 40,000 blood stones that he was able to improve his cultivation base so quickly. It is naturally impossible to support so much consumption just by relying on the income of the sky-bearing castle, the second elder said. Our main income is still a low-grade bloodstone mine 100,000 miles away from the sky-bearing castle. Bloodstone mine? Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard it. In the blood prison, condensing bloodstones out of thin air was indeed a method, but it was strenuous and unrewarding. The more important thing was to excavate the bloodstone mines buried deep in the blood prison. These bloodstone mines were buried deep in the blood prison and were also the main source of bloodstones for the major forces. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to meet the demand under normal circumstances. Yes, it is a bloodstone mine. However, the bloodstone mine is 100,000 miles away from here. It is very far, so we need someone to oversee it for a long time. Generally speaking, we also take turns to oversee it in order to prevent the blood demons from causing trouble. More importantly, it is to prevent the Flying Cloud Castle from spying on us. The Flying Cloud Castle has been eyeing our bloodstone mine for a long time. This is the foundation of our survival. Once it falls into the hands of the Flying Cloud Castle, the consequences will be unimaginable. Our sky-bearing castle will collapse directly without a fight, the second elder said solemnly. Yi Shiwen also understood that for a force like the sky-bearing castle, a bloodstone mine was the foundation of their survival. All of their expenditures depended on this bloodstone mine. As for other sources of income, there was no way to compare with the bloodstone mine. Now it's your turn to take charge. Of course, we won't ask you to take charge for a long time. 2 years is enough. Normally, there's a cycle every 2 years. I've been the one taking charge before. Now it's your turn, the second elder explained in a friendly manner. If that is the case, then I will go. Yi Shiwen also knew that there was no such good thing as just taking benefits without doing anything. 2 years later, he was about to be released from prison. At that time, he still wanted to rush out and soar to the sky. Most importantly, he wanted to condense the Blade Dao incarnation. It was the time when he needed a huge amount of bloodstones. Once he oversaw the bloodstone mine, it would be a good opportunity for him to steal what he was guarding. At that time, he would be able to get as much as he could. He looked at the second elder. Obviously, the second elder also understood the rules, but he didn't care, because everyone would have their turn, and everyone would have their turn. Naturally, he didn't have to worry about others taking advantage of him, because he was the same. However, even if they died, they probably would not have guessed how amazing the amount of bloodstones Yi Shiwen could absorb was. Yi Shiwen did not say anything. At this time, the most important thing was to make a fortune in silence. Then, I will have to trouble you, my good brother. The second elder smiled and went out. In the past 2 years, he had also made a lot of money. At this time, it was time to go back and properly digest it. Yi Shiwen did not stay for long. After giving some instructions, he hurriedly rushed in the direction pointed by the second elder. The distance of 100,000 miles could be said to be long, but it could also be said to be short. With Yi Shiwen's cultivation, it did not take long for him to arrive. Who is in front? Stop. As soon as he entered, a guard immediately came forward. All of them were experts in the myth realm. They were all experts of the sky-bearing castle under the 9 great elders. They were no different from the people in the secular world. Yi Shiwen directly showed his waist tag. They were immediately dumbfounded. The person in front of them was actually an elder. However, they had not seen him before. The 9 great elders rotated every 2 years. Therefore, those who had been here for a longer period of time had more or less seen the 9 great elders. It was just that they had never heard of such an elder from the human race. However, the waist tag couldn't be faked. At this time, they thought of another rumor. The original ninth elder had been killed, and the person who killed him became the new ninth elder. Could it be that the person in front of them was the one in front of them? Thinking of this, they immediately broke out in cold sweat. They had actually stopped the new elder. To them, the 9 great elders were all figures at the top of the golden pagoda. They had never seen anyone who had proven their Tao before. These were the most powerful experts they had ever seen. If they angered them, they might look like myths, but it would only take a few minutes for them to kill them. They immediately apologized. Yi Shiwen did not want to waste any more words with them. He directly ordered them to find the supervisor, and then directly entered the bloodstone mine. Chapter 2174. Although it was in the mine, there was also a secret room for cultivation. After all, the 9 great elders would constantly take turns to come over to oversee the mine. He went straight into the secret room built for the 9 great elders and went straight into the bloodstone vein. Not long after he sat down, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard, and a figure jumped in. It was an old man with white hair and a beard. He did not bow and scrape, but he was polite in a reserved manner. His cultivation was also very high. Yi Shiwen could see at a glance that this old man was also at the 8th level of Paong realm. Under normal circumstances, he would be able to control the situation. "Greetings, 9th elder." He cupped his hands and said. He could be considered a senior, even more so than most of the elders. Many of the elders were very courteous to him. Because he had always been in the bloodstone mine, everything depended on him. There were still many masters at the 8th level of Paong realm, but if there was no special opportunity, they might not be able to step into the 9th level of Paong realm and reach the peak of the myth realm. This was also the reason why they were willing to exchange cultivation resources for their subordinate. Otherwise, as long as there was some hope, these overlords would not be willing to live under someone else's roof, but people under the eaves had to bow their heads. "Please sit down." Yi Shiwen did not put on airs and said directly. The old man looked at him with some surprise. He seemed to be surprised that Yi Shiwen was only at the 7th level of Paong realm, but he could actually become the 9th elder. It seemed that the rumor was not a joke, but a real thing. However, he only glanced at Qi Li in astonishment before immediately withdrawing his gaze. "I am new here, and there are still many things I need to ask you," Yi Shiwen said. Although Yi Shiwen had lowered his stance, he would not underestimate Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen was not at the 9th level of Paong realm, he could play with the masters of the 9th level of Paong realm in the palm of his hand. According to the news he received, the 9th elder who was originally at the 9th level of Paong realm could be said to have been defeated by him easily. He did not have the strength to fight back at all. Such a strong person was not someone he could fight against. Furthermore, to be able to gain the trust of the other elders and take charge of this place for so many years, it wasn't just because he was capable, but also because he knew how to conduct himself. "If there's anything, just tell me, 9th elder," the old steward said. "I want to ask, how much can this bloodstone mine produce in a year?" Yi Shiwen asked. Reporting to the 9th elder, this bloodstone mine produces about 150,000 bloodstones a year. In addition to the 10,000 bloodstones given to each of the elders, it is mainly given to us as dividends, as well as turned over to the deity Abyss. Basically, there is not much left in a year. The old butler was not surprised. After all, Yi Shiwen was an outsider, so it was normal that he did not know this. Yi Shiwen nodded. Although it seemed that the income was not small, after dividing it equally among so many people, there was also the consideration of the people below him, as well as the amount that had to be handed over to the deity transformation Abyss, so there was not much left. There's one more question. People aren't allowed to stay in the blood prison. So, who's the one mining? Yi Shiwen asked. Not everyone could mine the bloodstone mine in the blood prison. Without the cultivation of the myth realm, they would not even have the ability to mine. The bloodstone mine in the blood world could not be mined using ordinary method. It had to be mined using the law as a sword to open the connection between the bloodstone and the bloodstone mine. Only then could it be mined. Masters who were not in the myth realm could not do it at all. Moreover, masters who were not in the myth realm could not stay in the blood prison for long unless they were local creatures. Otherwise, they would soon be devoured by the law of the blood prison, and it was normal for them to turn into blood demons. In the distant past, such a situation had always happened. Later, gradually, masters below the myth realm became fewer and fewer. Only the myth realm masters could rely on the condensed divinity to resist the erosion of the law of the blood prison. They are all scattered people. They are all attached to the sky-bearing fortress. Every day they are allowed to mine. After handing over a part of their harvest, how much they can mine depends on themselves, said the old butler. Generally speaking, it is easy for a person to mine more than 100 pieces of this kind in a day. Then, we will take half of it and the other half will belong to them. Of course, although mining here is relatively profitable, in fact, it is more dangerous. This place is far away from the sky-bearing fortress. If a blood demon tide suddenly occurs, they may not be able to escape. Yi Shiwen nodded. The profit was naturally proportional to the risk. There was no such thing as a free lunch. If I am in charge, what do I need to be careful about? Asked Yi Shiwen. He was not afraid to ask more. He believed that the other party did not have the guts to hide anything. Although the other party was also in the 8th level of Paong realm, it was only a matter of minutes for him to take action. I will take care of the trivial matters. There is no need to trouble the elder. However, you also need to pay attention to two aspects. First, we do not know when the blood demons will appear. If it is an individual powerful blood demon, we will naturally need the 9th elder to deal with it. If it is a blood demon tide, then there is no need to do so. We will have no choice but to run away when we encounter a blood demon tide, said the butler seriously. This was also the most important part. Apart from this, the most important thing is to be careful of the people from the Flying Cloud Fortress. They have been coveting our bloodstone mine for a long time. It can be said that they have always wanted to devour our bloodstone mine. Yi Shiwen nodded and asked again, where is the Flying Cloud Fortress? Compared to the sky-bearing fortress, which is stronger? The Flying Cloud Fortress is less than 300,000 miles to the north of here. Although it is a little further than the sky-bearing fortress, this bloodstone mine is still within their range of vision. In the past 100 years, we have had many conflicts with the Flying Cloud Fortress, explained the old butler. As for which aspect is stronger, the Flying Cloud Fortress is definitely stronger. In the sky-bearing fortress, including you, there are only 9 experts in the 9th level of Paong realm, while the Flying Cloud Fortress has as many as 15. None of the nearby fortresses can be compared to the Flying Cloud Fortress. Yi Shiwen nodded. It was no wonder that he had been warned to be careful of the Soaring Cloud Castle. The strength of the Soaring Cloud Castle was already bad enough. It would not be a problem for it to dominate the Xian world outside. However, the strength of the Soaring Cloud Castle was almost double that of the Soaring Cloud Castle. Such strength was simply inconceivable in the outside world. Since we have bloodstone mines, the Flying Cloud Fortress should also have bloodstone mines, right? Asked Yi Shiwen. The old butler replied, indeed they do. They have 2 bloodstone mines, which makes them very strong. This is also why they covet our bloodstone mines. As long as they can swallow our bloodstone mines, their strength will skyrocket and reach another level. When that time comes, they will not be able to find a match within 1,000,000 miles. As an old man in the sky-bearing fortress, it was normal for him to be so worried. However, Yi Shiwen did not care at all. He was just staying here temporarily. In 2 years, he might leave the blood prison. regardless of whether it was the leader of the Divine Union, the Wasteland Underworld Hall Master, or the Abyssal Demon Master, they would all be strangled in the cradle. Now that he had such confidence, he was even confident that he could fight the leader of the Divine Union fair and square without using any other trick. Oh no! Just as Yi Shiwen was about to continue his secluded cultivation, a noise was heard from outside. A pig demon at the second heaven of Paong realm stumbled in and said with a panicked expression, "What's wrong?" Yi Shiwen asked immediately. The demon looked at Yi Shiwen and then at the old butler, not knowing whether he should listen to Yi Shiwen. "This is the ninth elder. You can report to him if you have anything to say," said the old butler. Now that he knew that the person in front of him was the ninth elder, the pig demon seemed to have found his backbone. Although he did not know why the ninth elder had been replaced by this person, since the old butler had said so, it could not be wrong. He immediately relaxed and said, "Oh no, we have lost contact with the team that was sent to escort the Bloodstones back to the Sky-bearing fortress." Lost contact? How could they have lost contact? Could they have encountered a blood demon? The old butler, who was very experienced, could not help but ask as he immediately listed all the possibilities of losing contact in his mind. "No matter what, let's go and take a look first." Yi Shiwen was somewhat interested to encounter such a situation as soon as he arrived. He wanted to see what exactly was going on and who was stirring up trouble. "Yes, sir." The old butler quickly picked a dozen experts from the Sky-bearing fortress to follow Yi Shiwen. Although there was no mighty team, these people, even if they were soldiers, were all experts of the Legend realm. One of them could fight against thousands of soldiers. Everyone rushed to the place where they had lost contact with the team at an extremely fast speed. However, as soon as they arrived, they found that it was a mess with corpses all over the ground. The dozen or so experts of the Legend realm, who were in charge of escorting the team, had all died a violent death. Who did this? How could this be? Everyone behind Yi Shiwen was talking at once. The scene was really too tragic. "Oh no, this is the work of the Flying Cloud Fortress, not the aftermath of the Blood Demon's rampage," said the old butler, who was very experienced. He only took a glance and his expression suddenly changed. "Ha ha ha, I've always said that you are very experienced and as cunning as a fox. Now it seems that it is true. You can tell that we did it just by looking at the scene. You are really rare." Accompanied by a burst of wild laughter, a figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.